UAE this week, and I'm standing in the heart of Dubai's old commerce center. You've got the gold souk and the spice markets just behind me over there. But we're not here for sightseeing. We're not here to see the world's tallest building or the beautiful palm islands. We're certainly not buying gold or property, not in this economy. The reason why we're here is because right around the corner in Abu Dhabi, the capital of capital, is where Breakpoint 2025 is bringing together the futuristic global international financial system and the ancient spice and gold trade all in the same city. And fine, we are going to do a little bit of sightseeing, but the real reason obviously is to do 3 full days of live streaming from Solana Breakpoint, where we're going to be talking to the leaders of the Solana ecosystem and the global virtual assets industry. So how did the UAE become the capital of capital? Well, in truth, it all started right here in Dubai, and there's a few factors that all mesh together to create the reality that we see here on the ground today, which is that the traditional commerce we saw earlier can coexist side by side with this ultra modernity. The UAE is just a hop, skip and a jump away from Europe. We're about a 3-hour flight from most of the top Mediterranean and Aegean holiday destinations, and it's about 5 hours by plane to most of the Asian business hubs. Just like the Solana ecosystem, there's no shortage of construction and builders here, and as any property broker worth their salt will tell you, it all starts with location. But location's only one part of the equation, and that's where clever regulation comes in through the ADGM in Abu Dhabi and the VARA here in Dubai. Now, the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority was the world's first tailor-made, literally custom-built regulator designed for crypto, or digital assets as they call them most places, virtual assets as they're called here. And the third reason is access. Access to both capital and to talent. Now, the builders and the innovators, they want to relocate here, partly because of the low taxes, yes, and we'll get to that in a moment, but largely to do with access to funding and access to talent. So that's a great recipe for growth, and it all comes hand in hand here. Easily accessible from anywhere in the world, collaborative and specialized regulation, and most importantly, amazing access to capital formation. So it's no wonder then that Solana, as the home of internet capital markets, is hosting Breakpoint right here in the capital of capital, where institutions, builders, and regulators are all coming together. And that is exactly why we, as Solana Floor, are covering everything that's happening in the Solana ecosystem from the epicenter of action at Breakpoint. Join myself, Jack Dunham, our senior journalist Finn Miller, and of course Mr. Thomas Bahamas for 3 days of live streaming. Get involved for all the alpha, ask your questions, and we'll do our best to raise them with the experts who are joining us. gentlemen, we are live from 2025 Breakpoint here in the Etihad Arena in the capital of capital, Abu Dhabi, where the total degens, the DeFi OGs, the Solana OGs, and the trillion-dollar asset managers are all in the same arena, rubbing shoulders with the ETF issuers, the DATCos, and everyone in the Solana ecosystem that's building amazing tools, amazing products. Super excited to be here. Finn, Thomas, yesterday was super exciting. I think before we bring on our next guest, Matt Hogan, CIO of Bitwise, we should probably start with a little bit of a recap, right?
Yes.
Yeah, 15 minutes of recap before we bring our next guest on. Finn, what's the overall mood here? Yesterday was busy. We got 5 minutes of fireside chats and presentations on stage. What was the overall mood?
The overall mood, the biggest thing standing out to me is that nobody cares about price. There's so much happening. There's so much great news on the horizon. Institutions are here with full force, and all the attitude is just towards what's building, what's coming next, and how do we break through that next ceiling.
Absolutely. Price is so 2024, right?
Yeah, we don't care about that.
We don't care about that, right? The fundamentals are where they need to be. Thomas, high-level observations from yesterday. Overall bullish sentiment?
I'd say overall bullish. What really surprised me was like, all right, builders, everyone in TradFi, they're using Solana for what they want, and they are so bullish on what they're able to do with Solana, right? We didn't talk about that much about price. It's like how critical the infrastructure is going to be for them, and I love it. I left yesterday feeling really bullish.
Definitely. So, it was a long day of lots of bullish announcements. Now, shortly on the main stage, we're going to have Raj and Toli, and I think Mary from Loopscale as well, who we spoke to yesterday. They're going to be discussing some exciting announcements, and I think they might actually be about to leak / announce where Breakpoint 2026 is going to be held. We have some theories. We heard them sort of discussing earlier. California was mentioned. I don't know. Are we allowed to say this on live stream?
We thought they were going to break it. In pre-roll, but they didn't. But they did say the word California. I'm from California. Let's do this.
Thomas Bahamas came all the way from California, 28-hour journey. So thank you very much for gracing us with your presence.
It would be a great homecoming actually if it was in Solana Beach, California.
Yes,
that's where the name came from in the first place. So maybe it is a homecoming track.
I don't know, totally, Raj, if you're watching this, sorry guys, if we've ruined that, but I don't know. Something tells me it wouldn't be California, right? It's too far away from everything.
Yeah.
Surely they would do it a bit more central. Like they've gone Singapore, Lisbon, Amsterdam, now here in Abu Dhabi, in the UAE. So I feel like all these places are quite well connected.
Yeah.
And in my mind, no offense, Thomas, but California seems like it's a little bit too far away.
We'll see. I wonder if there's like a Kalshi market for this, because I bet California.
There we go. We might be speaking to Kalshi tomorrow at their side event, which I believe is going to be happening in the evening from 6 to 8 p.m., something like that.
Yeah.
So we'll be there as a media partner as well. Obviously, Kalshi's been making absolutely moves. I think they raised recently at an $11 billion valuation.
Insane.
Yeah, a staggering valuation, but also a staggering product that is many people are saying is going to be the big narrative of 2026.
Absolutely. Prediction markets are huge. Okay, I want to dive into what was happening yesterday. Speaking of huge, Galaxy and State Street. State Street, of course, the $5 trillion asset manager. Massive news. They're partnering. It's the 4th largest asset manager in the world, for the record. We thought Franklin Templeton was going to be the biggest person that we'd be speaking about. That's our biggest company, $1.6 trillion. But it turns out they've been upstaged with a $5 trillion AUM. So they're going to be using PYUSD, PayPal's stablecoin, for on-chain subscriptions and redemptions. And the fund is going to be seeded with $200 million by Ondo Finance. Obviously, tokenization is a huge story at the moment. What do we think about this? Is it mind-blowing or is it mind-blowing?
It's big. The total size of the fund is $5 trillion. I mean, massive. And in here, we had Thomas in here.
From Galaxy.
Head of tokenization.
Yep.
And we said, how much of that are you bringing on chain? Eventually all of it.
Eventually all of it.
Eventually all of that 5 trillion.
And was there any clarity around whether that would be predominantly placed through Solana, or would that be kind of multi-chain?
He didn't say. We didn't press him on it either, did we? I mean, I have a feeling if you've got $5 trillion, you're not going to put all your eggs in one basket, right? So based on what we discussed also with Anthony Scaramucci, founder of Skybridge Capital, former White House communications director, author of Solana Rising, all-around great guy. He was also saying, look, we recently tokenized a $300 million fund on Avalanche. That doesn't mean that we're putting all of our eggs in one basket. He said that's one of his smaller funds that's been tokenized, and he has plans to tokenize a larger fund on Solana. So I would expect something similar, something along those lines. Benji as well, right? The Franklin Templeton fund. They're putting money in different chains, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
You can't have that much risk when you're playing around with trillions of dollars. I think that's totally reasonable. Okay. Moving away from tokenization for a second, moving away from institutions for a second, this got announced yesterday. This is Unbreakable, Untouchable, Always Yours, Solflare Shield.
the thinnest hardware wallet I've ever seen personally. Looks like a debit card. I'm going to struggle to open that. There you go, Finn.
And the simplest hardware wallet I've ever seen as well.
If you can get into the box.
I think that's the beauty of it.
Absolutely.
It is so simple.
Simple to use, hard to open.
Dongles. Yeah.
It's simple to use. I think
Put
it's the
Unbreakable
tap
on
and
the
go.
box, and that's a reason
Unbreakable.
for that.
We're gonna, yeah, we can't get into the box right now, but it's real, trust me. And everyone at Breakpoint 2025 has received one of these for free. I believe they're retailing for $49. You can get one customized for $59. This is a great innovation, so super excited to see where that goes. Next, Jupiter acquired RainFi. That was announced yesterday on stage by Cash, cat herder at Jupiter. The crowd went wild.
Wow.
Yeah, it made Cash laugh as well, didn't it? He was like saying, "Oh my God, there must be a lot of droplet users here," and I have a sneaky suspicion it's to do with an airdrop.
So I love this for RainFi users. RainFi's been around for ages. They were part of the big first NFT wave. So it was a great lending protocol back in the day that a lot of people used and a lot of people fell in love with. They've been in droplets for a long time, so I'm happy for all those RainFi users who are now going to feel like they're actually getting some reward and they're getting some kind of payback for all that usage.
Another thing that we haven't put on this list that we have to mention is the 30% airdrop allocation to Solana Mobile Seeker users. We had Emmett, the general manager of Solana Mobile here, and he explained to us that 30% was a number that they arrived at with unanimous decisions from within the team. I'm super excited for that. We are all Seeker users. Emmett was here with his Seeker. You have 3, you have 1, I have 2. We love the Seeker. Needless to say, everyone is very active on the Seeker at the moment, farming those points. But
there's also a great picture of you guys when Finn was showing his usage. That is a fantastic meme template. I want to see some good memes. On that one.
Absolutely.
Like,
if you're level 4 or higher, if anyone's got to level 5, please let us know. We've been trying to get to level 5. We're not quite sure what the strategy is. So if you're going to pro tips, let us know in the comments. And also share the link to the stream with your friends, with your colleagues, anyone that might be interested with the institutional hour and some of the degens that we're talking to later on as well. How did you get to level 4?
Just trading.
Yeah.
Trading every day, fire it up, do some trades. Teach yourself how to trade while using the Seeker as well, because it's not for everyone. Trying to buy the bottom, sell the top is not easy. Nobody does it.
I managed to do the opposite usually.
If you get to level 5, go and show Emmett because he will be absolutely stoked. He'll be around the building.
Absolutely. Solana Mobile making moves. Super excited to see what that happens. Then let's get to some announcements that we heard from outside of Breakpoint before we talk about the afternoon news. Pump buybacks exceeded $205 million. And they managed to surpass Radium to become the top Solana protocol for buybacks within just 5 months. Huge news. We talk a lot about Pump Fund. For a while, we were thinking within the Solana ecosystem, there was this sort of idea that they were extracting too much value from the ecosystem. Then we were saying, but they're trying so many different things, and is any of it going to stick? You mentioned that the line needn't concern themselves with these petty questions because they have enough of a war chest. It looks like that is the case. What do you think?
Yeah, I am astounded at Pump Fund's ability to just continue to generate millions of dollars in revenue every single day.
Very impressive.
We've talked at length about how meme coin season has completely evaporated. Meme coin trading volume share is down on 10%, when it used to be 50% of everything that was happening on Solana.
Yeah.
And despite that, Pump Fund still turns up. They make $1 million a day in revenue. They funnel all of that into pump buybacks, and it's probably the purest way of returning value to holders that we know in the on-chain world.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Astounding business. Like, revenue model, that's them. Right?
It really is. It really is. Insane revenue. I want to switch over to the final announcement that we had this morning that was, I think, super, super bullish. Thomas, we discussed this yesterday. Solana spot ETFs recorded $4.8 million in net inflows. And most importantly, relevant to our next guest as well, Bitwise BSOL was leading with $3.7 million of inflows. Now, the total AUM is just under $1 billion now in Solana ETFs. I think that's extreme.
Yeah,
what do you think, Thomas?
Yeah, we're bullish. They keep buying. The flows are extremely solid. I'm looking forward to hearing more from Matt Hogan, actually. This is going to be fantastic.
I'm super excited. He's outside our glass booth right now, and the main stage action hasn't quite happened yet. So it's kind of quiet out there. It's obviously a storm in here from start to finish. We're going to have Matt Hogan from Bitwise. I'm so excited to speak. We're going to talk about all things Solana ETFs, Bitwise, BSOL, and the future of Solana's institutional adoption journey as well. But before we get there, Keel, we've been speaking to these guys as well. They are approaching, they're optimizing the Solana stablecoin landscape. They're a capital engine, $2.5 billion, super, super exciting. So they launched their season 1, and they're planning to deploy $500 million to attract, drumroll, RWAs to Solana. Exciting. What do we think?
Yeah, I really like what Keel is doing. I think the need for more, DeFi native primitives for Solana stablecoins is critically important. I think we have an over-reliance on centralized stablecoins, and going to a team like Keel, who's backed by Sky, the formerly MakerDAO, that brings a much more DeFi native aspect to it. So I'm really excited to see them come on Solana and really make a splash.
We spoke about this yesterday as well, right? The reliance on USDC and USDT. It seems that people have realized that there's an issue there, and there could be opportunities there as well.
Yeah, they sure can. I'm really looking forward to talking to that. So.
Yep. What else do we have? We were at Abu Dhabi Finance Week a couple of days ago, and we had the pleasure of talking to the founder of STBL. They are going to be making some announcements today or tomorrow, and that is also a stablecoin innovation project. They're essentially focusing on white label stablecoin solutions. Now, it remains to be seen if they're issuing a white label Solana stablecoin or if it's going to be an omni-chain solution, but super excited to find out what they are working on, because one of the co-founders is, of course, the founder of Tether.
Yeah.
So that should be super, super exciting. I hope I'm not leaking anything here, because we're gonna be in trouble if that is the case. But pay attention to Stable, STBL, pay attention to Keel as well. Interesting innovations. Now, Max Resnick, lead economist at Anza, came out with some spicy things on stage. We're going to talk to Matt Hogan about this specifically because they were on stage at the same time when Matt Hogan suggested that we might not necessarily be ready for $68 trillion of value being tokenized and brought on chain. Max Resnick disagrees. I don't really know what to make of it. 68 trillion is such a huge number.
He said that we were ready for it today.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what he came
what?
back with. Yeah.
I like Max, but Max, what are we talking about here? 68 trillion? Come on, man.
Yeah. But I think it's a question of scale in terms of throughput and the scale in terms of size. And I think we can take 68 trillion as long as there's not 68 trillion happening in every single block. You know what I mean? It's a question of adding that size without necessarily trying to gun through all that frequency and all that throughput at the same time.
Yeah.
I lean towards, I want to take Max's side on this.
We're ready?
I want to see it happen. Yeah.
I have question marks. My eyebrows are raised.
Move fast and break things.
Let's not break everything. My net worth is at risk here. Let's not do this. Okay, so Sanctum, another interesting announcement coming from those guys. We were with Eno, Chief Vibes Officer, who sort of talked us through this announcement. They introduced a mobile app set to launch sometime in 2026. 2016, that feels like it was a long time ago. Wow. Mobile users are going to get 10% Sol rewards paid daily, so that's instant rewards, and there's collectibles as well. I think they're mainly focusing on making Sol staking a little bit easier for users that are just about dipping their toes into the Solana ecosystem.
Yeah. And I think having a mobile app is so critical in this day and age. You know, if you want to really reach the TAM and you want to get your product out to as many people as possible, you need to be on mobile.
Yeah. And it's just like another way that Sanctum is like really solidifying themselves in LSTs, staking Sol, and this, I'm excited for it.
Very excited. They also mentioned that they had a partnership with, was it DFDV?
Yeah.
Yeah? Am I remembering that correctly?
Forward
Industries? Yeah. Right, no, they were interviewing DFDV, and they had a partnership
That's what it was.
with Forward Industries. I can't remember the
they
details. It was a B. It was
1.5 billion, wasn't it?
Surely, yeah.
It was around that into their own liquid staking token, right?
I believe that is the case.
Yeah.
Eno, don't kill us. We're butchering these numbers, mate. There's too many facts, too many figures to remember the details, but very interesting announcement from Sanctum and Forward Industries. It's probably to do with liquid staking. Yeah. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as well. Now, a couple minutes before we bring on Matt Hogan, the CIO of Bitwise. Couple announcements though before that from outside Breakpoint. Again, prediction markets. So we have Polytrade, the mobile trading terminal for Polymarket, introducing gas-free Sol deposits. Now, gas-free Sol deposits, in my mind, depositing Sol isn't exactly an expensive process.
No, but it's more about just the simplicity of the UX. You know, it's not it's removing a click from the workflow, and it makes it a whole lot simpler. So I think it's obviously a net positive just for the user experience.
It's a good onboarding trick.
Right.
You know,
I don't want to call it a gimmick, but it seems like it's more of a marketing slogan. How much gas have you paid cumulatively using Solana over 5-6 years?
Yeah, 1 Sol maybe.
Right.
You know?
But I think it's not about the fee. I think it's about abstracting away the process.
Yeah. True. Okay.
Yeah.
Reducing
I think
friction.
that's the unlock, is that it makes it faster and easier.
I agree.
It removes points of friction.
That's true. Now, another update from outside the Solana ecosystem came from Abu Dhabi Finance Week, where we were interviewing some of the founders of large centralized exchanges, so on and so forth. We found out that Binance received a full ADGM license. That's pretty interesting. The world's biggest exchange, I think, by most measures. Circle 2, Jeremy Allaire was on stage yesterday talking to us. Circle 2 received an Abu Dhabi license for full operation as a money service provider. So obviously the ADGM, who's also represented here on stage, are making moves, and they're making life a lot easier for Solana founders, for centralized exchanges, for crypto companies in general to operate in this area. And I'm super excited. Now, very quick rundown of what's going on today. Matt Hogan is about to join us in less than 60 seconds. We're starting off with Institutional Power Hour. Super excited to do this. We are bringing on a star-studded timeline. Unfortunately, we're going to say goodbye to Thomas Bahamas in just a second. Starting with CIO Matt Hogan, we have Nick Dukoff from Solana Foundation, Kristen Smith from SBI, who was literally in the White House representing the Solana ecosystem this year. Super excited to chat to her and find out what the mood was within the White House. So she's going to literally transport us into that moment. Very curious to see what that was about. Rebecca Rettig from Jito, who was previously the lead counsel from Polygon. We've had the pleasure of talking to her in the past. She's going to come on. Ben Coviston, Temporal, I think you're quite excited for that one.
Yeah, so I'm going full on a gigabrain deep dive with all the DeFi heavyweights. I'll be speaking with Ben Coviston from Temporal, Michael Marcantonio from Galaxy Digital, and running that with Zano Shawani from Jito later on in the day. So yeah, very excited.
And Degen Hour happening as well. So we're going to divide the day into two with Total Degen Session. Warbucks and Ashen are going to be joining us to split the day. And then we're going to end the day, the afternoon, we have Bulk, Soulflare, Jito, Oro, and Baxis. Thomas, final words from you. We're ending the day with a few bangers. They're golden whiskey.
Yeah, we are. I'm so pumped for that. So a little shift, right? You know, you get the institution in, go after some regulation, some DeFi, and then finish it out with the original store of value and a little bit of whiskey. We'll have a recap with some whiskey. Why not?
Super exciting. Okay, let's get Matt Hogan mic'd up. Our first guest of the day, Institutional Power Hour. I could not be more excited. Obviously, Matt Hogan is
whatever you need.
A massive Solana bull. He's also an Ethereum, Bitcoin bull. He's a crypto bull, generally speaking. Super knowledgeable. But we're very excited to chat with Matt Hogan, the CIO of Bitwise. Mr. Hogan, how are you?
What's going on? I'm doing well. How are you?
Very excited to chat with you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live from Breakpoint 2025 with Matt Hogan, CIO of Bitwise. We're going to talk about everything related to Bitwise, BSOL specifically, and I think Solana's institutional adoption journey as well has been quite interesting in 2025. I have a few spicier questions for you about what's going to happen in the end of year, what's going to happen in Q1. But let's start very high level. What's the mood here in the capital of capital in Abu Dhabi today? You've got degens, you've got Solana DeFi OGs, you've got TradFi institutions, you've got trillion-dollar asset managers, yourselves, the ETF issues, everyone's here in the same arena. How are you feeling?
It's absolutely refreshing to be here. The energy is unbelievable. If you've been on crypto Twitter and feeling sort of down and downtrodden, that's not true here. I think the people here can see where this thing is going. They can see it going to trillions of dollars. They can feel it. They feel it in the people that they're meeting. So I've been rejuvenated being here. It's really been great.
Overall, a very bullish atmosphere, you'd say?
Very bullish, but not crazy, I would say. Very purposeful.
Okay.
Very serious people, but yeah, very bullish.
Good. So we've sort of moved past that extremely frothy period in the market, it seems.
100%. Yeah, it's actually, from my perspective, the perfect vibe. Because when you get to that overly frothy feeling, you know that you're set up for a pullback. And we've certainly been at conferences. If you've been in crypto, I've been in crypto for 8 years full time. We've seen conferences where it felt like that. This does not feel like that. It feels like a building atmosphere, a positive long-term building atmosphere.
I haven't seen any Lambos outside. Maybe that's a good indicator.
Great indicator. That's right. That we're serious. Matt, first I want to congratulate you on getting the BSOL ETF listed in the middle of government shutdown. It's a real 4D. It was 4D cheers. We had all kind of written off that nothing was going to happen until the lights came back on in the White House. What did that look like from your perspective? Were you guys confident that you were going to be able to get that through using the delayment amendment?
Well, we were hopeful, I guess is the right word. We shouldn't let the government being inefficient and unable to do things slow us down in crypto or in asset management. It was one of those moments where we thought legally we could do it. We felt good about it because we had had lots of discussions before the government shut down with the SEC. So we felt like we were at the end. But until it started trading, I had this little thing in the back of my mind that said, who knows how this is going to turn out. Maybe at the last minute, the rug will be pulled out from under us, but it started trading. The response has been phenomenal. You've seen the inflows consistent almost every day, which is very rare in ETF land. So yeah, it was, we thought we could do it. We were confident we were right, But until it actually happens, there's always this worry that it won't. And it was really wonderful to see VSOL launch.
And there was even that kind of validation from Chet Atkins, who said it's really pleasing to see companies going after this and figuring this out and, getting listed in this manner.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the new ethos at the SEC, which is pro-investor and pro-innovation, as opposed to let's block everything and not let anything go through. And it's been really great from my perspective to give people an opportunity who are comfortable owning ETFs to access Solana at the prices we've seen. It's been sort of I look out 5-10 years. This is a phenomenal gift that we got it out in this window.
I want to attach some numbers to that success. Yesterday, we got reports that you were leading inflows again with $3.7 billion. We're looking at total Solana ETF AUM just under $1 billion now.
Yeah.
And I think you guys became the single most successful ETF launched of the year with $500 million, I think in about 3 weeks or so.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
It felt great. It's great to see the audience respond to Solana. We weren't surprised because although we couldn't talk to people about ETFs specifically,
right.
Bitwise does 15,000 meetings a year with institutional investors. So for the past year, we've been talking about stablecoins and tokenization. They've been asking us how to access it. We had been telling them Solana is probably the most leveraged play to the growth of those themes. So we knew that there was demand. But it's of course wonderful to see a product launch and see the people come in. And those are really big numbers in ETF land. I should say, I come from an ETF background. I was the CEO of ETF.com. Most ETFs struggle to get to $50 million in their first year. To see something get over $500 million in flows in just a few weeks is an outlier. It speaks to how much Solana resonates with investors.
And I think to your point earlier about the mood here being overall bullish compared to crypto Twitter, where we saw extreme fear on the fear and the greed index, institutions seem to be very optimistic. So my question to you is, for us, at least in crypto Twitter, when we're not at these conferences, what often drives sentiment is price action. What has been driving that optimism from the institutions? Is it the fundamentals, or is it simply the fact that you can get levered exposure, as you said, to the growth of Solana? What is driving that optimism?
It's just a really easy bet for institutions. When you're betting on Solana as an institution, you're making two bets. Bet number one is that stablecoins and tokenization will grow. You have the you have the Treasury Secretary saying stablecoins will 12x in the next 4 years. We just had Paul Atkins come in and say, all US stocks will be tokenized in the next couple of years.
Extremely bullish.
So, more bullish even than I think many people at this place realize. There's $680 million of tokenized stocks today. The US equity market is $68 trillion. That's 100,000x. That's extraordinarily bullish. So institutions look at that and say, it's fait accompli. Stablecoins and tokenization are going to grow. I want to invest in that. And then on the Solana side, you get this second bet, which is that this better, faster, cheaper ecosystem is going to get a bigger share. If you can get two bets at once, that's why it's resonated so much with institutions.
So has that become then the ultimate race, that as tokenization comes on chain, it's up to each chain to really scramble to get as much of that inflow as they can?
Yeah, I think that's right. Tokenization and stablecoins, and I think institutions will judge on the relative success in those areas. They are excited about Solana, which is the leader on tokenized equities, because that's a space they know and feel and can see coming clear as day. But yeah, that's what institutions are going to be judging Solana and other chains on in the next year.
Okay, I want to just dial in on that tokenized equities aspect.
Yes.
Part of the beauty of crypto is that it's 24/7 on-chain finance that anyone can access from anywhere. Has there been some pushback from traditional financial players to say, we still want our weekend, we still want market hours?
Let me sleep.
It is true, when you come into crypto, you do wish that the market would close, but there's an inevitability to this, right? I think that people recognize there's no way we're not moving 24/7, 365 global. Will systems have to adapt? Will they need people in different geographies? Will liquidity have to change? Absolutely. But people know where this is going. We've seen this movie before in other parts of the digital arena. It's absurd that the New York Stock Exchange shuts down at 4 p.m. It's absurd. And so I think people recognize that. But yeah, they're sad to lose their weekends for sure.
I want to ask you about that $68 trillion figure, because I know there was a bit of an exchange on stage with Max Resnick yesterday.
Yeah.
So that's super curious. A bunch of people messaged in about that as well. But before we get there, a little bit of a reality check. Now, we've seen the SOL price correct significantly. I think it's down about 40%. Let's say it drops another 40%.
Yeah.
How would that potentially negatively impact VSOL?
I think you would still see inflows.
Okay.
I think you would still see inflows. It is, of course, true in any asset that you get more inflows if it's doing well
Right.
from a
Yeah.
price perspective.
Yeah.
But you have to remember that institutions are starting at zero. It's
Right.
not like they have established Solana positions. They're starting at zero. So there's this one-time injection of flows that I think will take a year or two to play out. So if it falls another 20, 30, 40%, that will slow down flows, but I don't think we'll see outflows. You saw that in Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin ETFs launched January 2024. Yes, there's been months where there have been outflows. That, of course, can happen. But broadly speaking, they've pulled in $50, $60 billion. That's because people are getting off zero. Crypto native investors aren't at zero. So they
Quite
may...
the opposite.
Quite the opposite. They're well north of 100.
Yeah.
So they may come in, they may come out. But this is a 5 to 10 year net inflow bid. Not every day, not every month, but every year. I think we'll have positive inflows for the next 5 to 10 years on VSOL.
Can we say the same thing about DATs, digital asset treasuries? To a certain extent, people argued, and I think made a very compelling case that DATs were sort of front-running ETF approvals.
Yeah.
We saw valuations go up, stock prices go up, and then it all sort of started unwinding. Now, the reason why I'm asking this is because we've been asking many of our guests, to what extent do you believe that Solana DATs specifically pose systemic risk to the ecosystem? Curious what you think. Curious if you think, following another 40% price dip, these Sol DATs would cause significant systemic risk to the ecosystem.
I don't think significant systemic risk. If you look at the concentration of SOL held by those DATs, the biggest share tend to be in DATs that don't have significant debt and that are what I would call missionaries in the space. I like to think of DATs as missionaries and mercenaries. You have the people who really believe in an ecosystem. You have Kyle Samani as chair. He's not going to be selling SOL. Then you have the people who followed on, sort of the Me Too's who saw an easy buck. They might get washed out of the system, but they own a very small fraction. The ETFs are a much bigger deal than those DATs. So I don't worry about DATs. Will they buy less SOL in the future than they bought this year? Probably. But you didn't have an ETF filling that other bucket. I don't think they're a systemic risk at all. You'll see a few small ones blow up because they're poorly run companies. That's fine. That's okay. The big ones are going to be just fine, is my take.
Consolidation, shakeout, mergers and acquisitions, totally natural progression of DATs.
That's exactly right. The thing about running a company, any company, and a DAT is a company, is that you have to do something hard to be rewarded.
Yes.
And so the DATs that just wanted to do something easy, like what my ETF does, buy SOL and stake it, that's easy. They shouldn't be rewarded. The ETF does a better job than that. The more creative DATs who are contributing to the ecosystem or finding other ways to grow, they'll be rewarded. But yeah, look, in broader equities, we don't worry if one company goes bankrupt and another goes to $1 trillion. That's fine. That's capitalism. That's how it works.
Yep.
Same thing is true here. They're not all created equal. There'll be winners and losers, and that's totally fine.
Nothing to worry about.
No.
I think one of the prevailing conversations we've had is that, like you say, the DATs that have just kind of caught on and rode the wave, that don't have any extra value offering to the ecosystem, probably won't make the cut. Whereas ones like Forward Industries, like Soulmate, who are doing infrastructure and RPC platforming off the back, these ones that have a business that runs alongside the treasury are more likely to go the distance.
Absolutely, yeah. Again, companies have to do things hard, right? You can't do something easy and succeed. Those companies will get washed out. I think there'll just be a mix. We need to stop talking about DATs as a group and start talking about individual DATs, and I think that'll be the story in 2026.
I want to get back to your talk on stage yesterday. You mentioned 68 trillion, 100,000x, right? You argued that maybe we're not quite there yet. Max Resnick has a slightly different take. He thinks that it could happen. I don't know if overnight was his argument, but he thinks that we're a lot more ready than you think. So talk me through that discussion. What were the two sides of the argument? How heated did it get?
Yeah.
And what was going on there? 68 trillion is a massive number, and everyone's been asking about it.
Yeah, so the debate was, is Solana ready to handle all the flow that Wall Street has? And from one perspective, the person who had the con setting there was arguing, look, Wall Street sends millions of messages a minute, right? Is it really ready to handle that kind of consistent flow? And it needs to be, because it can't break once the world's equity markets are built on it. It can't break. Max's perspective was twofold. One, the technology is more ready than you think. That was part of it. He hinted at an announcement later today to suggest that that's going to be increasingly true. And then also, I think he made a really great point, which the existing Wall Street system is dramatically inefficient. So a lot of those messages are unnecessary in a new, more modern system. And I think that's probably something that the community doesn't talk enough about. My view is that the technology has had a chance to get ahead of the existing system. We're currently ahead. It still needs to iterate and get better. If $68 trillion came on chain today, I don't know what would happen. Right?
We were speculating about it earlier as well. It would probably not be great for our banks.
It would not be great. To say why that's not bearish, think about if that was true, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, right? On ETH, we saw transactions spike to $100 each. Like that would be one and done. I actually think conveniently, because regulations suppressed growth for so long, the technology had a chance to get ahead. I think of it as like, it's like one lap ahead in the race. And there's probably like 3 or 4 laps left until we're there, 3 or 4 years. And it just has to stay ahead. It's not a guarantee that it will, but if the developers here do their job, then I think it has a chance.
I want to play devil's advocate on that for a second. So we talk a lot about bringing this $68 trillion asset market on-chain. Solana's obviously encrypted to do that. We want to see Solana take the bulk of that. What stops the established TradFi giants with trillions at stake already, a huge amount of resources, a large war chest, from just spinning up their own competing privatized validator, network, and attracting that tokenization?
Yeah, they're going to try, and there is some chance that they succeed. But the history of technology suggests that opens wins. I remember the early dot-com bubble. So just to give you a story from internet past, in the early dot-com bubble, people were like, the internet won't work. This open, crazy space is too insane. There's no way it'll succeed. Everyone loved intranets. Intranets were the thing. This company has a safe corner of the internet. It's so useful. They were on the front page of magazines. They were on CNBC talking about intranets. But open ultimately wins. One thing that we should clarify, we talked about the U.S. equity market, $68 trillion. There's another $60 trillion globally. And part of the reason why I don't worry about that ring-fenced nature is that financial markets broadly are not just going 24/7, 365. They're also going from regional to global. And in a global scenario, open, from my perspective, is probably the only way it works. So I think Solana will win. I think they'll try to create their ring fence, but the world wants this to be a global capital market. They want it to be 24/7, 365, and open is the solution there, not closed.
When we talk about capital markets being open, what comes to mind is the whole slogan of internet capital markets is literally on Finn's
there you go.
as well. I'm curious, from when you talk to your TradFi counterparts, some of these large, sophisticated investors, are they warm to the concept of internet capital markets? Is it something that they care about? Would they rather listen to you explaining the value of stablecoins and tokenizations, for example, or RWAs? Do they care about internet capital markets at all?
I think they're getting there to care about it. They need to see real-world use cases that match their understanding. So stablecoins is an easy example. Tokenization is an easy example. I don't think they imagine all that internet capital markets could do. But that's true of any technology innovation, right? Like, I keep making these old analogies. I feel bad. But go back to the early days of mobile. The idea of like summoning a stranger to pick you up in your car was totally crazy.
True.
Like,
or staying in somebody's house.
Staying in some random dude's house?
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me?
Renting a room.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely absurd. And one thing I try to convince people when I talk about this broader vision is that you can't possibly understand and imagine all these things. If you did, you'd be Max Chesney. If you did, you'd be the head of Uber. And we will have those things too. So I think there is a broader story here and people understand it, but it's easier to ground them in stablecoins and tokenization because it's skeuomorphic. It's what they know. They can imagine it being better, faster, cheaper, global. And we'll just, we'll walk them along.
That makes sense. I want to ask you about inflation. I know this is something that Finn thinks a lot about. I have a feeling Raj and Toli are going to be on stage shortly. They're going to apparently announce where the next breakpoint's been. Do you have any insider information on this?
I don't know. I don't have the insight.
Can you leak anything? We've been trying to get a scoop on that all morning, actually. So excuse me.
I want to be invited back.
Absolutely. You want to?
So jumping in on inflation, one of the most palatable examples of why staking ETFs was so critical for the success of ETFs in general is that it provides reliable, stable, and predictable yield for ETF investors. Solana is now discussing bring that inflation down, does that make it a harder sell towards your institutional client base?
I don't think so. The thing what people want with ETFs is they want an easy button if they're comfortable in that environment. So as long as an ETF like BSOL is staking 100% of its Solana, whatever the yield that's available to us, that's great. The core investment someone is making when they're trying to access SOL is not for the staking yield. It's for the 10x return that's possible if we see all this money move on chain and Solana dominates. The staking yield is nice. So if inflation comes down and that's positive for the price of SOL, they're happy. All they want from the ETF is to know it's safe, secure, it's low cost, it stakes 100% of its assets. It does so in a way that's aligned with the community, which we're really proud of doing at Bitwise, working with Helios. That's what they want. So I don't think it will harm inflows at all. I think, again, inflows are this one-way direction on Solana.
Speaking of inflows quickly, you've attracted around 74% of the entire AUM of the Solana ETF market. How have you managed to stay so far? Okay, do you think that's going to continue to be the case? Do you see things leveling out?
I think you can tell the word inflow just triggers both of us.
I love it.
Let's go.
Maybe one more inflows.
Yeah.
We have two advantages there, and I hope we'll be able to maintain a lead. One is that first matters in ETFs. You're the largest, you're the most liquid. People know you, they know your ticker. That is that builds on top of itself. The other is that, look, Bitwise is one of the largest crypto asset managers in the world. We do 15,000 meetings with investors every year. There aren't many people who can say that. So in terms of educating the community and bringing them into Solana, I do think BSOL will be the leader in the space. At least I hope so. We're really pleased to have this position. We feel very aligned with the Solana community, and we're going to do everything we can to maintain that leadership.
And you have been embraced by the Solana community, I think. You know, it's
feels
the
great.
first thing everyone talks about. They wake up in the morning, they check their
Yeah.
And then we had 22 straight days, which is, I think, almost unheard of in crypto ETF history. Just consistent inflows.
Unheard of in ETF history, right?
Yeah.
30 years of ETFs, you rarely get that consistent inflows, and I think that will continue. We're going to at least try to do our part. Yeah.
I want to end on a super bullish note, but before we get there, again, a slight reality check, I guess. You have 15,000 meetings per year with TradFi investors. These people are sophisticated. They have, much higher, lower risk tolerance than we do, and longer investment horizons, let's say. What are some of the major concerns that they voice to you? Not just when you talk about crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum. I know you're interested in these realms as well, but Solana specifically. What are some of the concerns that they voice?
Yeah, the biggest concern is whether we'll get market structure legislation in the US.
Which is apparently coming.
Which we hope is coming. I'm optimistic is coming, but when people ask me what are the risks in crypto, the technology is not really the risk, it's politicians messing it up.
Right.
So I think, I actually think it's important from an inflow perspective. I think inflows will be somewhat suppressed until that risk is removed from the market, because there is the perception that if we don't get that, the regulatory future of crypto in the US is more uncertain. And that probably affects Solana more than like Bitcoin, right? Because you're building real world use cases. So the regulatory posture matters. So when I think about what prevents them, it's that more than anything else.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is just time. They just don't have much time to learn about things. So, but I really think from a short-term perspective that do we see market structure pass before the US midterm elections will be the determinant on whether, from my perspective, we certainly go to new all-time highs next year, or whether there is some choppiness in the market.
Very interesting. I think we spoke with Anthony Scaramucci yesterday. He would likely echo your sentiments on that.
Yeah.
You speak about choppiness. If we go back a few months, we had the biggest liquidation in crypto history. Do you think there's still some contagion hiding in the closets of that event?
Well, I don't know is the answer, but I'm glad you bring it up, because I think it's one of the reasons I expect the market possibly to be choppy through the end of the year. There are these two forces that crypto investors are worried about from my perspective. It's people trying to front run the 4-year cycle, which you can do until the end of the year, and then it's too late. And it's worries about bodies emerging from the 10/10 liquidation event. If bodies are going to emerge, chances are they want to wrap up by year end. They don't want another set of legal documents. They don't want another set of tax filings. So there is like some risk of bodies emerging to the surface as we get towards year end. Once those pressures are removed, I think you're going to see the impact of inflows trying to sort of steadily push the price up. So choppiness through the end of the year, and then we're very optimistic for Q1.
We were very optimistic for Q4. I remember a few months ago, the argument was, and it seemed totally logical at the time, that the debasement trade would essentially force many asset managers to say to their clients, "Hey, look, we understand risk on assets. We think this is a sort of general trend, and that capital would continue to flow. In fact, inflows would accelerate into assets like Bitcoin and trickle down perhaps into Ethereum and Solana as well. That hasn't necessarily happened. We've seen sort of quite the opposite in terms of price action. Obviously, 1010 played a role in this. The government shutdown played a role in this. But still, we have this divergence, as we've described, of crypto Twitter sentiment and institutional investor sentiment. To what extent are we confident that that's now going to be a Q1 rally versus we still need to see this regulatory clarity before we see a rally?
Yeah, I think the regulatory clarity is really the starting gun of when all the major risks are removed. So we talked about those two risks, front running the 4-year cycle, the 1010 liquidation. I think those peel off at the end of the year.
Right.
But it is the market structure bill that I think will be all clear signal. You'll start to see the market pricing in the probability of success as that goes up. We actually got some relatively good news today from insiders on progress that the group has made toward getting that over the line. So it's not like the market won't rally until that happens. Of course, markets are anticipatory, but I do think that before it's all guns blazing going higher, I think that you need to see that market structure.
Very, very interesting. And Finn, yesterday you were asking some of our guests to what extent the midterms pose a risk to that as well, right?
Totally. I mean, for what, if it doesn't happen by like May or June, it's not going to happen. And I do think because the politics of the midterms is uncertain, if it doesn't happen for this Congress, it's unclear that it will happen in the new Congress. So I actually do think, I think it's really important that we get this done in the next 6 months and get it embedded into law, because the positive regulatory aspects are just sort of regulatory. They can shift with a new administration. They can shift with new politics. So I think it's really important. Yeah.
To what extent do you think the current administration, let's say Donald Trump more specifically, his family's involvement in crypto, digital assets, more broadly speaking, they're involved in many, many projects. To what extent is that involvement going to encourage him, do you think, to really get this over the line?
I think it obviously he's made a commitment to crypto. Crypto rewarded people who were pro crypto in the elections. I think that's positive. I also think his family faced debanking and sort of felt those challenges. So I think they're aligned with that philosophically. But look, it is bipartisan, right? People forget this. Like the Genius Act was the third most bipartisan bill in Congress this year.
Which is fascinating to think how far we've come in such a short period of time.
It's absolutely amazing, but that's because so many people in the US own crypto, right? More people have crypto than have dogs. It's a big deal in the US.
That's an interesting fact. I didn't know that.
It is.
It's a very real world
Yes.
that you can visualize.
I use that all the time with financial advisors, because they're like, none of my clients have crypto. I'm like, do any of your clients have dogs? Yeah. Of course they have dogs, and of course they also own crypto. So they're millions of Americans. So I do think it has a very good chance. And Democrats want it, and Wall Street wants it, and crypto wants it. So I'm optimistic, but we do need to see it get done.
So the 4-year cycle, at this point, is it a myth?
Yeah, completely dead. It was true. It's no longer true. The forces that caused it are no longer relevant. And now we have these new forces of institutional adoption. I think 2026 is an up year, so we'll drive a dagger through the heart of the 4-year cycle, and we'll never have to talk about it again.
Raoul Pal has an interesting theory on this as well, is that in this particular instance, it's been elongated due to not just liquidity, but also the business cycle. Do you agree with that, or do you think there's maybe more or less?
Yeah, I mean, well, I do think liquidity is an aspect. When I look at the 4-year cycle, just to dig into it for a minute, I think about what drove it past. It was the Bitcoin halving.
Yes.
It was interest rates, and it was sort of blow-ups in crypto, right? Those were the three things. The Bitcoin halving is definitionally half as important every 4 years. So at this point, it's just not that much Bitcoin. It doesn't matter that much. It's not as important as it was 4 years or 8 years ago. Interest rates are going sideways or down. They went way up in 22. They went way up in 2018. So that is not, and blow-up risk is substantially reduced because we have a more positive regulatory environment. We're not going to get an FTX. We're not going to get a Mt. Gox. Yeah. I wish this were would. But I think it has been substantially reduced. The space is more institutional. It's more established. So I think the blow-up risk is much lower. So those three forces just aren't as relevant as they were in 22 and 2018. And on the other side, you have 21 straight days of inflows into BSOL, right? You have you have ETFs that buy more than 100% of the supply of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. So there is net negative supply in all of these markets, and that's going to accelerate next year. I just don't see how the 4-year cycle repeats. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
So moving forward, does that look like absolute maturity, wherein we have higher lows and lower highs, and we enter just a much more stable price action moving forward?
I think it's grindy. That's my expectation on price. That doesn't mean we won't have 20 or 30% pullbacks. I think there's still substantial upside. You don't get return without risk. But I think the days of 70% pullbacks are over. I think it's going to be grindy, and that may be frustrating to crypto Twitter for what it's worth. It may be just slow and patient and up and to the right, but there's still a huge amount of upside. We're still so early. I shared this slide the other day about the relative size of these markets, which I think is worth, we think of crypto as big, it's $3 trillion. We think of Solana as big, it's what, $70 billion. The global equity market is 110 trillion. The global bond market is 150 trillion. It is orders of magnitude bigger. So we still have a long, long way to grow. But yeah, it won't be as volatile as it has been. It's going to be more grindy and up and to the right.
It always gets put back into perspective, when if Nvidia does a 5% move, and that's the entire market cap of Bitcoin itself,
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I mentioned this yesterday. ETFs added $4 trillion in assets last year. That is more than all of crypto, right? So the scale is just really, really big. And we're still super early in crypto, which I think sometimes we forget.
We absolutely forget that. It's so easy to lose track of size and scale. When you're in a place like this, you think, oh, we've made it. It can't get any bigger than this. You've got, $1.6 trillion asset managers. You've got $5 trillion asset managers. Surely this is the ceiling, but we're not anywhere near that, are we?
Nope, not anywhere near that. No. It goes much higher still.
I want to end on a very, very bullish note. It looks like the 2026 conference location is about to be announced on stage. I'm visibly excited about this. But for you, Matt, what is the single most exciting development that we can look forward to in 2026 in terms of where Solana might be going next?
Yeah, I think it's going to be twofold. We're going to see market structure regulation go through. And then I really think we're early in the phase of a million interesting applications. I think even crypto natives understate how much crypto was suppressed by the regulatory pressure. That was released a year ago. You can imagine really smart people now feel comfortable to build in this space. Mm-hmm. So I hate to say something that I don't know specifically what happened. I can't point to this, that, or the other, but I think we're going to see the entrepreneurial energy that was released when regulation was lifted from its oppressive state start to bubble up in exciting new projects. Another way of talking about it, just to close, 3 years ago, we talked about crypto. It was mostly about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Today, we talk about crypto and it's Bitcoin and stablecoins and tokenization. I think what we're going to see in 2026 is there's like an infinite number of those interesting applications that have real world scale. And I'm just really excited about it.
I think we're also super, super excited. It feels bullish. I mean, price action, we were joking earlier, price is so 2024. It's all about the fundamentals. Finally, that's unfortunately all we have time for. Matt Hogan, thank you so much for making time to chat to us on Solana Floor. We will be in touch. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
An absolute pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone watching at home, do not go anywhere. We are going to be right back with you with, of course, the man who made all of this institutional adoption possible in 2025. It is Nick Dukov joining us from Solana Foundation. I think he's getting mic'd up now. Super excited to chat to him. And just behind me, I don't know if you can hear this, but on stage, Raj and Toli and Mary from Loopscale, who we spoke to yesterday, are discussing, among many, many things. Hello, Nick Dukov, please join us. They're discussing, among many other things, where the next Solana Breakpoint conference, I think, is going to be held. We're joined by Nick Dukov.
Hey, how's it going?
Nick, how are you, sir? How's it going?
Good morning, GM. How's everybody doing?
GM, we are so excited. We've been trying to understand where this institutional adoption journey of Solana has been going, but I want to start by echoing some of the sentiments of people that have been commenting and people we've been talking to, which is a congratulations to you, sir, for making all of this institutional adoption possible. I feel like this is sort of your conference.
No. As Lily said and Akshay at the opening yesterday, Solana Breakpoint is a celebration of the ecosystem. And over 7,000 people are here from over 100 countries. And it's every one of them and the two of you that make this possible.
However, I feel, at least in my experience, having $1.6 trillion asset managers in a small glass booth talking to us, having $5 trillion asset managers announcing things at Breakpoint, alongside the degens, alongside the Solana OGs, that's something worth celebrating in and of itself, surely.
I'm really happy where we are. There's always more work to do. The original vision, of course, of Tole and Raj, who are talking right behind us on the main stage at Breakpoint, is on-chain NASDAQ. We now talk about this as internet capital markets, and
On this t-shirt as well. Yeah.
love it. And obviously having folks like State Street and JP Morgan and Franklin Templeton and VanEck and on and on and on, Fidelity, certainly makes that easier, and we're getting closer and closer. But I was joking with Raj the other night that it's like asymptotic, right? We never get there because there's always one more hard quarter.
So I guess, is BlackRock the final boss battle then?
Well, BUIDL is on Solana, right? There's already, I think, 100 million plus of BUIDL on Solana, maybe more, and I know that number's growing. So like to think we'll have $1 billion of BUIDL on Solana at some point soon.
That's through their partnership with Securitize, I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it really speaks to the competitive nature of Solana as well. It's that Kobe Bryant job's not finished attitude to always push through and always reach that next ceiling. ETF inflows have been incredible. We're approaching 1 billion now. Phenomenal. We just had Matt Hogan on. What is the sentiment looking like? We had 22 straight days of inflows. Do you consider that's going to kind of continue to be strong for the remainder of the year?
Obviously investors have wanted exposure to Sol, the asset. Prior to the Trump administration, we couldn't really talk about Sol, the asset. It was always, blockchain, not crypto. And obviously this has been an incredible year for Solana on so many different dimensions, on the tech, on the ecosystem, institutional adoption, but also with Wall Street now bringing the asset, to the mainstream, retail and institutional customer base via ETFs has been huge. And of course, Bitwise was the first out of the gate. They were really clever in the way that they did that during the government shutdown, which was freaking awesome. And it was just such a special moment to be there to ring the bell with them. And Tole and Raj came in to New York for that, and then followed that up with so many more issuers, Grayscale and Franklin Templeton and VanEck and Fidelity. Some of the biggest names in the world are saying that they want to put their brands behind Solana, and I think that's really exciting to see.
Absolutely. A big part of it, though, because Solana Foundation has been there obviously since the beginning. They were very deeply involved in the DeFi side and the on-chain side and that very retail user-based side. And we're almost kind of veering away to that into a more institutional focus. So how do you kind of bring balance between the two worlds and ensure that Solana is still for everyone in that environment?
Yeah, I think everyone includes retail and institutions, right? Everyone is everyone. When we talk about, our vision, all assets, everyone on Earth, single liquidity venue. All assets is all assets. Everyone is everyone, right? That's 8 billion people. There's about 80 million monthly users on Solana today, so we're 1% of the way there.
Wow. So the job is by no means done.
Absolutely not.
No. I just by the crowd behind me, I see London.
Yes,
I see a London montage. Can we leak this? I feel like
it's London Breakpoint 2026, mid-November.
During my birthday as well.
Bring your umbrella, but it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Exciting. London 2026. You heard it here first. If you're watching this live, super excited for that. We were trying to speculate. So before the live stream started, before the main stage discussions were on, we heard them talking. They mentioned the word California, and we thought, oh my God, is it going to be California? We don't particularly want to fly to California, do we? But London is a lot more accessible for us. We live in Europe, so I think we're both very happy about that.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Every year this conference just gets better and better, right? To think about, where we were after FTX to 2023 in Amsterdam, which just really felt like a much, kind of smaller, more intimate, but still I think there were 3,000 people there last year. In Singapore, I think we had close to 5,000, and now this year with 7,500 here in Abu Dhabi from all over the world is just incredible to see.
Yeah. So one of the big narratives that we've had through 2025 has been RWAs, and you've played a critical role in that in bringing treasury funds on chain. The market is exploding for RWAs on Solana, but we're still leagues behind Ethereum in that term, in terms of TVL, in terms of adoption. How do we broach that gap? Is it a question of time? Is it a question of trust? How do we catch up?
Yeah, so obviously Ethereum has a 5-year head start on Solana on all aspects. That said, there wouldn't be Solana without Ethereum, right? If there wasn't the first smart contract chain, there wouldn't be the best smart contract chain, which is Solana. And so I think, the RWA is growing very fast. I suspect we'll be in the billions for sure next year. Just to talk about, a couple of the announcements yesterday, State Street issued a liquidity fund on Solana, tokenized by Galaxy. And the exciting thing about that is State Street is what's known as a GSIB, a globally systematically important bank. And they chose to issue on Solana first. It's actually the first time a GSIB has chosen to issue on Solana prior to either their own private network or Ethereum. And so I think that just shows that Solana is now in that pantheon with Ethereum as like the most critical infrastructure for institutional use cases. And then later yesterday, at the close of business New York time, while we were out, hopefully enjoying ourselves with others in the community.
We were right here talking to Mike Reed from Franklin Templeton.
Awesome. Mike is a good friend.
Absolutely.
Love Mike. Thanks for doing that. JP Morgan announced that they did a $50 million commercial paper trade on Solana mainnet. And the reason that's important is JP Morgan is the largest bank in the world. Not only are they the largest bank in the world, they're also incredibly sophisticated with respect to blockchain. They have a huge team, previously called Onyx, now Connexus, where they built their own private blockchain. And yet they chose to do this trade on Solana. And I just think that shows that if it's good enough for JP Morgan, it's good enough for literally every other financial institution in the world.
Particularly considering Jamie Dimon's extremely hostile statements in
He's
the past.
come around. He's come around.
He's come around. And if he can change his mind, surely we can make miracles happen in this ecosystem, right?
The famous IBM saying nobody got fired for buying IBM. Nobody got fired for tokenizing on Solana. And now I think more than ever, we're here, we're ready. We're going to see more institutions choosing to build on Solana. But we're just getting started.
I want to talk about tokenized equities. We said tokenization there a few times, so I'm triggered by this. Now, the context for my question is that 95% or up to 95% of tokenized equity volumes have been on Solana in recent times. Obviously, Solana is much more of a retail-focused chain than others. But if we talk about tokenization, we talk about RWA proliferation. In the same breath, we often talk about institutional adoption. So we've been asking a few of our guests. We've got some interesting responses. To what extent are we sort of losing that retail focus when we bring institutions on board?
I think it's and.
Right.
You asked a similar question earlier, and I don't think this is a tension. I think this is an and. And if you think about how markets work today, look at the success of Robinhood, right? That is predominantly a retail trading application. For brokerage, when you look at Fidelity or Schwab, those are both institutions and retail, right? And ultimately, folks are buying and selling NVIDIA or IBM or whatever stock every single day. And, there's institutions on one side of that trade, retail on the other. And so I think it's both. I think you want both. And I think the cool thing about Solana is it's the only chain that has both institutions and retail.
I think some of our followers on crypto Twitter might point out the fact that, yes, but when Toli and Raj shook hands with Jim Cramer, prices started cracking. So,
oh God! In hindsight, it was good for the lore.
Yeah. It was a good photo of, I think, not great for our bags.
No, but I think we're steering away from crypto Twitter being this barometer of what is the common sentiment towards crypto.
Yeah.
I think that maybe that was the case 4 years ago, but I think our vision has expanded since then.
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely moving in the right direction, if you ask me. Project Crypto, the SEC. Do you feel strongly about it? Obviously, we've come such a long way since Gary Gensler's extremely combative regime, where people were getting, debanked left, right, and center. Businesses were afraid to operate in the US. They were moving overseas to places like this, where the VARA, the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority, and the ADGM were a lot more welcoming, a lot more collaborative. We've obviously moved beyond that, but how exciting is Project Crypto to you?
I mean, it's insanely exciting. To see where we are today from where we were a year ago is just incredible. And the SEC issued a no action letter to the DTC just today, allowing them to now move forward with tokenizing everything in the US. The DTC settles $4 quadrillion worth of public equities trades a year.
It's a lot of zeros.
And they have folks here at Breakpoint. So they're experiencing, everything that Solana has to offer, and I think, I'd love to be able to say, one day that, you see more and more of not only U.S. public equities but global equities trading on Solana. Remember, all assets mean all assets.
So the ADGM was on stage yesterday. I'm guessing you've had conversations with representatives from the ADGM. They were also sponsoring the Abu Dhabi Finance Week event that we were at a couple of days ago. I assume you were there as well. Totally was. Soulmate had its own sort of booth, marquee there. I thought it was fascinating to see the amount of Solana representation at an event like Abu Dhabi Finance Week, which is such a TradFi institutional and regulatory focused event typically. How do you feel about that? The amount of Solana representation there?
I mean, it's just incredible. I pinch myself every day. It's like hard to believe where we've come as a ecosystem. But just think about it. There's 105 countries represented here at Breakpoint. That means that there's 105 countries with people that are shilling Solana. And so Solana is global as well as local. So here we can come to Abu Dhabi and Dubai and see Solana represented strongly here. Mm-hmm. You could go to Singapore, you can go to London, you can go to New York, you can go to San Francisco, you can go to virtually every major city in the world and over 100 countries and see Solana represented there. And, I think it's our job, to continue to, bring more along the journey. Because once somebody uses Solana, and even if they're not knowing that they're using it, they feel the speed of and power of a financial internet, and I think that's the vision for what we're trying to build. And you guys in particular, are such great contributors to the ecosystem, and you feel this, but it's also more than that. It's more than just a tech platform. It's a community, and yeah. I think that's the thing that really brings everyone together and makes us able to show up at something like ADFW as if we had the whole weight of the world there, because Solana is everywhere.
How defensible is that mode? Because we talk a lot about speed and throughput and accessibility. What if, God forbid, 2 years' time, some new chain comes out and it's faster or better for whatever reason? How do we...
There have been many such cases.
Okay, so what's the thing that keeps people coming back to Solana in that?
We worry a lot about this, yeah. Comfort us a little.
We want to have that long-term vision.
Yeah, listen, only the paranoid survive, so it's the right feeling to have, is to be, thoughtful and vigilant about competition. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, I also think it's important to do your thing and just keep doing it. I think Solana has, from its inception, had a very unshakable vision that we continue to march towards. Whereas, competition can come in on a single axis. They may, flex Canton privacy right now, or Hyperliquid with perps trading. And, we've seen this over and over and over again. They come in, with a single focus. And by the way, if you look at the Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen, this is the story of technology, right? You see a technology, it adds features over time to satisfy more and disparate types of customers, and then somebody else comes out with something that's a bit simpler and focused, for a narrower set of customers, and ultimately then goes along its own journey. I think the way that Solana persists and is able to continue to grow in the face of increasing competition is we're very responsive to that. So let's just take Hyperliquid as an example. Why is Hyperliquid done well? It's very, very fast. Centralized, right? That's why it's able to be so fast. Okay, cool. Alpenglow, right? Alpenglow is going to ship, in 26, and this is going to reduce settlement finality from 400 or 500 milliseconds to under 200 milliseconds. Snap of the finger. Now all of a sudden you've got the whole economy of Solana at the speed of something like Hyperliquid, but decentralized. And so I suspect that will win, right? And so we saw Ellipsis, Eugene talk about Ellipsis yesterday. I mean, obviously we've got Drift. There's no doubt in my mind that Solana will win, because we keep innovating and keep getting better. There's this mindset that I think Solana has, and it's, I really do think it's because of Dole and Raj and the culture that they set, not only within Labs and Foundation, but the broader community, which is that one more hard quarter mentality, right? Just you got to keep grinding, you got to keep building, you got to keep getting better, and it's just, I think, built into the fabric of our ecosystem. I mean, JP Morgan, right? JP Morgan is big news. Like in my opinion, it's the single biggest thing that has happened in kind of the institutional story of Solana. There's many stories of Solana, but in the institutional story of Solana, the JPM issuance on Solana is, I think, the biggest. You know what? I'm back to work today. We're gonna keep building and keep bringing more folks and keep going deeper, because can't stop, won't stop.
Do you have a wish list just before we get that sort of journey of back to work today?
Listen, Nasdaq, we got to get Nasdaq,
right? Yeah.
So is that the North Star? Is that the vision, to not kind of spread out and go jack of all trades, master of none, and serve general purpose, or is the Nasdaq on train still the hyper focused vision?
I mean, all assets, all global market participants, single liquidity venue. It's really that simple, and that just means more assets, more people, better, faster, cheaper.
You see it right here, internet capital markets.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's on people's hats. It's on the merch that we're seeing. By the way, on a slightly lighter note, I have a bit of a spicy question for you. But how amazing is the merch here? I think Solana conferences do merch so much better than most other conferences.
I'm so grateful. I was walking in early this morning. We were recording a podcast with Bird Eye, and Amal and Johnny from Solana Spaces caught me, and they gave me like the sickest Solana windbreaker. And
we're gonna have to get our hands on one of those.
Yeah.
Man, I'm just so pumped. It'll be perfect for London in November.
Exactly.
It'll be perfect for London in November next year.
Well, we just got some hoodies thrown at us as well.
Oh, nice.
I have to say that the merch here is absolutely amazing. But okay, I'm gonna
undefeated. Perenna, in my opinion, also is like
the kimono was gorgeous.
Yeah,
they're next level.
Yeah.
With merch.
Brilliant. We're trapped in this box. Not to say I'm not loving it, but we do need some merch. So if you're watching this, please send us all your merch. We'll try and discuss it on the stream as well. Okay, I'm gonna shift the mood a little bit. I apologize for this, but you're talking about one more hard quarter. It was a pretty difficult quarter. 10-10 sort of set the tone, I think, for it. We were discussing with Matt Hogan earlier, to what extent do we expect contagion to spread? Maybe some bodies are gonna, wash up on shore.
I think they would have.
They would have already.
I think that was a lot of chirping. Yep. I don't know. Listen, crypto's volatile. The end. Crypto is volatile. I mean, it goes up, it goes down. But the thing you got to remember is forget price. And just look at the incredible amount of growth in the application ecosystem, institutional use cases, in the core tech. That's all going up into the right.
Yep.
Everything else follows.
So we're not too concerned. Is the sort of overall thing.
I'm not losing any sleep.
Okay.
If 2025 was the year of institutions, of TradFi involvement, of ETF stats, what is 2026? What's the story of 2026 in Solana?
Yeah, I think it's got to be growth of all of the key metrics, right? I'd like to see Solana continue to grow on stablecoin, on payments, and on institutional RWA. And I think if we continue to do the things we're doing, that's going to happen just organically. And I think that's the most important thing to remember about the Solana ecosystem is the Solana Foundation, quite small. We're only 70 some odd people.
And getting smaller?
Well, the final closing keynote of last year's Breakpoint in Singapore was, should we shut down the foundation?
And I do have very strong feelings, I must admit, about that discussion. Quite the opposite, I think. So when this discussion came up, it was Dan Albert was making very solid arguments. I think ideologically, even outside the Solana ecosystem, as far as governance goes, it's a great line to follow. But surely we're not there yet. I mean, I look around now, and I don't think there's any way we could be organizing this event in the Etihad Arena without the amazing work that's being done by Foundation.
Yeah, you know how many people are on the events team at Solana Foundation?
I want to say less than 10.
2.
Immense.
Well, that's a two-man army.
Yeah.
Woman.
2 women, gender neutral, but
yes. Listen.
Shout out to Ellie. This is absolutely insane.
Incredible.
The GOAT. She's amazing. But Amy too. But the thing about the Solana Foundation is we want to have the widest thumb on the scale possible. And Totally was just saying, he's like, listen, I hope next year I don't have to be up on stage at all. He's like, I just want to be here hanging out, watching,
Is that why he's growing the beard? He's like, to blend into the background.
And, I think that is the ethos, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, how can we, contribute, but have it compound organically, right? How can we, kind of maybe slightly, kind of nudge something in a direction that can then, kind of take on a life of its own. But that's always the goal is, how can we grow, help the ecosystem grow, while having, the lightest thumb on the scale possible.
So if we take that into the account of the jobs not finished mentality, what does Solana community need to do to kind of carry that torch and relieve some of
You're
that?
doing it, honestly. You're doing it. You're showing up. You're building. You're shilling. Just keep doing more of it, and we've got to keep bringing more and more people into that ecosystem. 80 million is great. I want to see 800 million. I want to see 8 billion. And this isn't going to happen overnight, but we're building. We're thinking decades. Not minutes or days.
So we're overall bullish. Price is a thing of last year. The fundamentals are strong. The institutions are here, and that's also now positive. All sort of moving in the right direction. But there's got to be, in your mind, a set of objections, issues, problems that are raised by your TradFi counterparts, let's call them, when you talk about Solana, when you shill Solana, and you talk about the potential and the optimism that exists here. There's got to be a list of, I'd say probably a long bullet point list of things that they bring up and say, yeah, but here are some of the reasons, the reservations that I have. What are those, and how do we overcome them?
Yeah. So there's kind of like two tracks. There's like, okay, one track is I'm building on the blockchain for the first time. We do really well there. Like, let's use State Street as an example. If I'm like, I want to be on chain. I'm an institution. I want to be on chain. I haven't built anything yet. It's now effectively 2026. Solana has got to be on your short list. It's got to be like on the top of your short list.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. The good news is there's way more institutions that have not done anything than those that have. So first of all, we are incredibly well positioned to win the huge number of institutions that are just coming on chain for the first time.
And that's larger than the number
That's
of
awesome.
institutions.
Way larger.
Yeah.
But for the institutions that built somewhere else first, like let's take JP Morgan as an example, they almost necessarily are EVM. Almost necessarily. Because if you were building something on a smart contract chain and it's not Solana, almost by necessity it was EVM.
Yeah.
And so we still have work to do to bring folks along that are less familiar with Solana. There's this kind of fear that they have of the unknown. They're like, well, I know Solidity, I know smart contract development on Ethereum, I know ERC tokens, but they don't know Solana, they don't know SPL, they don't know token extensions.
Not yet.
In some cases. But then what we find is, again, let's take JP Morgan as an example. They, roll up their sleeves, they read the docs, and they're like, holy shit, this is way easier than I thought. And we're actually working on a case study right now to show what the power of token extensions, which using the program, you can deploy a token like JP Morgan did without any rust, without even having to have an independent audit, because the program is reusable, audited, bulletproof, easy to build. And that's the beauty of token extensions, is it makes it so easy to build permissionless tokens on the public permissionless network. And I think, if JP Morgan, and again, they're incredibly well-resourced and sophisticated, but, they figured it out quite quickly and did it quite elegantly. And so I think we are increasingly building a pattern and reference implementations for EVM shops who are now coming to Solana. I know this is being live streamed and I don't want to reveal news, but
you're more than welcome to take anything.
because it's already on the schedule. I'll give another example is Wisdom Tree. So Meredith is here from Wisdom Tree. She was at dinner I was at last night. They'll be announcing that they're bringing 14, I think 13 or 14 funds to Solana. And, again, they did it all in-house, and we're surprised how easy it was to build on Solana. So, we just got to continue to help tell that story that, for those that have not ever built on Solana, Solana is a clear, obvious choice for institutions, and it's so easy to get started. For those that are already on chain and maybe, more familiar with EVM, it's really not that hard to build on Solana. And I think increasingly they're going to see, these large institutions, JP Morgan, WisdomTree, and others who have built on EVM come to Solana, and ultimately everyone will be on Solana.
I guess the next evolution of that is then what, BlackRock and sovereign wealth.
All assets,
all the capital,
all
in the world.
people in the world, single liquidity venue.
Just final question. We are going to end on an extremely bullish note, and we're going to be talking with Kristen Smith from Solana Policy Institute in just a moment, who was in the White House not too long ago representing us. When we talk about this journey, this development, I think it's difficult to get lost in all the different things that are happening. But from your perspective, having been there at the forefront, what would you say is the single most exciting development now as we go into 2026? Is it regulatory changes? Is it more institutions coming on? Is it institutions that have dipped their toes into Ethereum land and now they're coming to Solana land? Is it internet capital markets? Is it the fact that we're going to be in London next year for Breakpoint 2026? Is it really difficult for you to put your finger on it and say, this is what really gets me out of bed and makes me excited about Solana?
Man, there's so many things.
That's why it's a tough question, and we want to know.
I think we've been hearing for quite a while about Firedancer. We've been hearing about Alpenglow. I think we're going to see those live in prod in 2026, and I think that is going to be enormous.
So the tech is still.
I think ultimately it's the tech that enables everything else on top of it. And the tech keeps getting better. You were asking about all the competitors, blah, blah, blah. Like, the tech keeps getting better, and we know Alpenglow and Firedancer, are going to add, resilience, speed, efficiency, throughput, security to the network. And, we'd like to see those running live in production. I would like to see those running live in production. And I think that's going to happen in 2026 and just make Solana even better and help enable, the growth of everything else behind it.
Excellent. Nick Dukov, unfortunately, that is all we have time for. Thank you so much for making time to chat to us on Solana Floor. We're here all week, obviously, more than welcome to pop back in. Our next guest is Kristen Smith from the Solana Policy Institute. Nick Dukov, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Enjoy the rest of your time here at Breakpoint. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We are live from Breakpoint 2025 in the capital of capital. You can hear the man, the myth, the legend, Eno, the chief vibes officer at Sanctum, screaming his lungs out on the main stage. We're chatting with Solana Policy Institute next. So if you have any questions, pop them in the comments. We will do our best to raise them with our experts. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live with Kristen Smith. How are we doing? How are you feeling? So nice to see you.
Hi, I'm feeling good. I'm a little jet lagged. It doesn't seem to go away.
I can imagine.
I can imagine.
Unfortunately, it's going to be just as bad next year. We just heard that Breakpoint 2026 is going to be in London.
Yeah, that sounds like a big improvement over
I guess a couple of
yeah. So we'll take it.
And it's not in the desert, but it might be rainy, so umbrellas are due, I think.
We can make that happen. We'll make
First impressions.
Swag.
First impressions from the desert, from the capital of capital. As somebody who's been leading the charge as far as lobbying and representing the industry, the ecosystem in the White House, among other places, you're here now. You're rubbing shoulders with trillion-dollar giants and the degens. What are you doing?
Well, it's so fun. It's easy to get lost in Washington dealing with policymakers. It's obviously much more fun and pleasant to deal with them than it was several years ago when we were having such an uphill battle with regulators. But for me, it is very exciting to be around people who are building on Solana, and the energy is fantastic here. It is a really good sense that we've achieved a lot as an ecosystem, and there's a clear pathway forward. And so it's a lot of fun, and I've really been enjoying it.
Absolutely. And as part of our institutional power hour this morning on day 2 of Breakpoint, we've been talking to Matt Hogan from Bitwise was here. We had obviously the head of institutional growth, Nick Dukov himself was here. We've been asking people over the last few days, also at Abu Dhabi Finance Week, what they think of the idea that all of this institutional growth that we've seen in the last 12 to 24 months comes at the cost of the sort of core ethos and identity of the Solana ecosystem specifically. I know you have spent time working in different ecosystems as well. But the retail focus, that sort of ideological, ethos-driven adoption narrative of decentralize, disintermediate, all these values. Is it a bad trade-off necessarily, or from your vantage point, is it simply a part of the natural progression, the maturity of the industry as a whole?
Yeah, well, I think it's a sign of success, right? I mean, I think we want institutions to come in, and one of the things that, like, when we're looking at policy in Washington, is we want to make sure that the new system we're building doesn't come at the cost of the values of what got us here, right? Like, we want to get rid of intermediaries. We want people to be able to transact directly. We want them to be able to hold their own assets. This is a really important, these are important values. And if we're just building the same old system again, then we're failing to do our job. And so,
We're I'm gonna grab that from there.
This one's not working. Okay, sorry.
We don't want to ruin your dress.
I was saying such
Apologies for that. Now you have your own microphone.
Now I have my own microphone. Okay.
Exciting.
Okay, sorry about that.
So the ethos doesn't necessarily have to be, lost in this maturity process. Essentially, is what you're saying. Which is a positive, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be lost. Now, obviously, in one of the cool things about Solana, like if you look at compliance, as we bring different markets that have different requirements on chain, there may be different ways that you have to interact with them, but we don't want to do anything that compromises sort of the core protocol or some of the core principles. Like we want this to be the marketplace for everything, and we want to be able to issue any kind of asset on Solana. And so I think that's going to be different depending on which market you're looking at. But yeah, no, I think it's exciting. The energy is good, and obviously the regulatory progress is been, I think, a part of what's gotten us here, but it's really the people who are here at this conference that are building on Solana that is making all of it work.
So when you speak with these policymakers and these regulators in the White House and the SEC, how interested are they in the decentralization aspect of this? Satoshi never would have wanted Bitcoin to be an ETF, and yet here we are with a huge spread of ETFs. What's the connect for them with that ethos?
Yeah, so it differs. I think that there are some policymakers, there's some in the White House, some on Capitol Hill, some of the regulators that really understand sort of the value of decentralization. But that is not a concept that comes naturally. Like if you think about how policymakers go about achieving their different objectives, what they often do is they try to regulate intermediaries. So when you get rid of that intermediary, it's very confusing to them. And it's actually one of the biggest challenges we have with particularly the legislative process is, for those who are new, their gut instinct is to force an intermediary in there so that they can regulate that. And we have to be like, oh, no, there are different risks here. Let's look at this from a different way. And we need to keep the intermediaries out of it. And so it's a challenge. But I think, we have some really strong champions on both sides of the aisle that do get it. And fortunately, like when it comes to policy making, you don't have to have every person in Washington that understands the details, but you have to have a core group that are willing to put in the time and effort. And I do think we have that. But more importantly, there's a whole infrastructure on the ground in Washington, D.C. There's us at the Solana Policy Institute. There's my old organization, the Blockchain Association. There, are hundreds of professionals that are working to make sure that we have the education, the foundational education in place that we need in order to get the policies done right.
And I imagine that gets exponentially more difficult when you have events like we saw in January with certain presidential meme coins. How do you convince these people that this is a serious environment? Things like that?
Yeah, interestingly, the meme coin doesn't come up as often as I thought. But if you step back, the president of the United States issued a meme coin on Solana. Yeah. I mean, this is actually quite remarkable.
It's a great proof of concept.
Yes. But I think Raj and Toli were talking earlier about how most technology its origin is in entertainment, right? If you look at the internet, it was cats. If you look at NVIDIA, it was video games. I think it's not necessarily a bad thing that meme coins were the testing ground, because I think it shows that Solana is the fastest network in the world. It is, the most used network in the world because of meme coins, and that it's really had like real life like usage, like real life test cases. And so I think, when we're trying to think about bringing other markets onto Solana, like it's proof that it works. And so, but yeah, it's, we don't get much about the meme coins specifically, but there is often concern among policymakers, particularly on the Democratic side, just the sort of president's family involved in the business and the industry, and that tends to be more the issue that comes up, and if there are conflicts of interest there.
I believe you've looked into that quite extensively.
I have. I've done a lot of research on it. I'm quite a big fan of the political angles when it comes to it. That's why we're talking to Anthony Scaramucci earlier as well. He's a very outspoken, both critic and proponent sometimes of President Trump. Curious from your perspective, though, and by the way, I want to go back to something you said earlier, champions of industry and ecosystems. We forgot to do this, but congratulations to you and Miller. The amazing work that you guys do at SPI.
Thank you.
You're literally in the White House representing all of us, and I think that deserves a mention. So I will ask you about that in a second. But you mentioned some of the reservations. Democrats in particular have come out and they've said, this is crypto corruption. He's not a crypto president. There's a lot of slogans flying around, but as somebody who's trying to, again, as Finn mentioned, convince the world and regulators and the White House that this is not a deeply unserious industry, as many people accuse us of being, to what extent does President Trump and his family's ventures get in the way of that? Not just the meme coin, which I guess is easy to sort of sweep under the rug as a bit of a jokey endeavor, but his involvement with Binance, the pardon came up recently. There's a lot, it seems, that's easy to poke holes in and say, hey, look, this is cause for concern. To what extent do you feel that as a barrier to you doing your job?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I think we've had a lot of success on the policy front in 2025, despite the Trump family's involvement. Is it going to be a topic that is brought up against, particularly on the Democratic side against the president going forward? Absolutely. I mean, they're going to look at, every way possible to be critical of the president. So it certainly doesn't make our job easier as advocates. But that being said, I think, we were in a terrible place. We had Gary Gensler that was trying to contort the securities laws to take out all of the industry in the US. We were debanked as an industry across the board. Like, it was terrible. And I would take an overly enthusiastic Trump family about crypto like any day than to go back to where we were before. And so, I think this is like a relatively minor problem compared to what we had. I do worry that there is going to be attention to this that's going to complicate the efforts. But I think that's one of the reasons why we've been working so hard to get as many policy changes as we can into law or into regulation. And then, at that point, listen, JP Morgan is like doing stuff on Solana, like you're not gonna be able to undo that, right? And so I think, there's this kind of critical moment where, if we can, get more, sort of mainstream institutional adoption, that protects us politically because, people come to rely on it and you won't be able to undo it.
But I guess the flip side of that argument is, we were talking with Matt Hogan earlier, and he said that the midterms do pose significant risk in terms of some of the upcoming legislation. If we don't get that passed before the midterms and the midterms go the way we don't as an industry want them to go, then they might not ever sort of be passed. So where do you stand on that debate?
Yeah.
Of it's either now or never in terms of price specifically? I think the main impact will be on price in 2026.
Yeah, well, I think. So I have a little bit of a non-traditional view on the legislation.
We love that.
And
Hot takes
I'm
are
going to
more
get in
than
trouble
welcome.
for this. But listen, we got the Genius Act passed. Like, that is law. That is not going to be done.
Bureau fits into that.
Pardon?
Congratulations for
Yes, that was
preparing
fun. I got to go to the White House bill signing ceremony. I haven't done that in my 25-year career in Washington. That means that like Solana is not going away, right? Because there are stable coins that are federally regulated that are issued on Solana. So, that piece of legislation was a huge win in terms of like solidifying the role of like a layer 1 blockchain. Market structure legislation is underway. It is a hugely complex topic, way more complicated than the stablecoin issue. There are, they're trying to deal with the token classification issue. They're trying to figure out how new projects can do fundraising. They're trying to regulate the spot markets. They may or may not be trying to preempt state regulation. They've now brought illicit finance into this. They're looking at tokenization of securities as part of this. These are all in and of themselves like incredibly complex issues, and they're really difficult to get right. And so I think that there's a lot of work that's going on, but if you look at the stablecoin bill, the debate on stablecoins started in detail back in 2019 when Libra launched, like before Solana existed. And
that was an interesting time. You were with the blockchain association.
I was with the blockchain association then, and actually we were going up and trying to talk about like this isn't actually very decentralized. Like this is different than other crypto.
That was a crazy time.
It was a crazy time, and you know, market structure, that debate started kind of in 2022, but it's just not as far along in Congress. So, listen, I think the agencies, some of the biggest problems with crypto were because the agencies were misinterpreting the law. Like if you look at Gary Gensler, he was suing everybody, trying to be like, all this is securities. And he went to court, and you know what? The crypto industry won in court. And then, you know, we get a more reasonable person in there, and they pulled back any of the pending litigation. If the SEC can go and do rulemakings, and the CFTC the same on the derivative side, and actually change, you know, get into regulation these principles. Like a lot of the work of the legislation, I think it'll narrow and be easier for Congress to tackle, so it won't be as many issues. But I think, listen, it's going to be like the Congress is working very hard. There were meetings at the White House yesterday on this. They really want to get this done, and they're really motivated. And I think that, you know, I think there's still a good chance that we can get it done in 2026. But if not, I don't think it's the end of the world, because I think the regulators will step in and solve some of these issues and take them off the table.
You say it's not the end of the world. It might not be the end of the world for the industry, but I think a lot of the retail participants of Solana specifically would say, okay, but it might be the end of the road for us, at least for, you know, this cycle or the foreseeable future, because, you know, so much of sentiment on crypto Twitter is price driven. And I know that, you know, you sort of think about the industry in a different lens typically, but I guess words of comfort for us as retail participants of the industry. What might the light at the end of the tunnel be in terms of the regulatory process, assuming things don't go great in the midterm?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you've got one more year of Republicans controlling the House, the Senate, and the White House. But you have 3 more years of Republicans controlling the White House. And so that means you have Chair Atkins at the SEC. He said he wants to get all equities and other securities on chain in the next couple of years.
That's huge.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
He's also said most tokens aren't securities. So there are
complete 180s from the previous.
And there are processes that he can do that can make those statements pretty permanent. And he's got 3 years to do those. So the midterm doesn't impact what the regulators do. But, you know, the midterms could change Congress. I would say, though, we do have good champions on both sides of the aisle in Congress. So it's not like it was before, where Elizabeth Warren was sort of dominating the conversation. You know, you have Kirsten Gillibrand from New York. She's fantastic. She really gets this space, and she wants to do things correctly. So I don't think a change of control is necessarily a deal breaker for getting legislation done. So no, I'm pretty.
That's relieving.
Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic that we're gonna get all these problems solved.
We were a bit stressed after Matt Hogan said to us, you know, it's make or break in April. We were like,
I know. I just talked to Matt, and I was like, Matt, we got to stop like telling people this.
So we might pack up the stream, get the pitchforks, go to what, you know.
Yeah, but listen, there's other issues out there too, like the treatment of staking rewards from a tax perspective. You know, that's something the IRS can do today. We're working really hard to try to get that one done. There's other legislative issues that we could address on the tax side. So, you know, we're looking at this from a bunch of different angles, and we're trying to use whatever process is possible. But I mean, it's just night and day compared to where it was right now. You know, I keep getting invited to, you know, White House meetings, White House Christmas parties. Like, you know, I didn't go to the White House for 4 years when Biden was there, despite like constantly asking for meetings.
I find that so fascinating. And if you don't mind, for all the people that are watching at home, I kept banging on, you know, before you came on about the fact that you had been in the White House, not just for the sake of it, but to represent the industry and as a sort of result of all the successful, you know, lobbying that you guys have done with Miller, who I think you spoke to not too long ago, right?
Yeah.
teleport us into the White House in that moment. There was a lot of crypto representation, but there was a lot of Solana representation as well.
Yeah, no,
What
we
was
had
the mood like? Maybe
Lily was in town. We were able to
Yes.
get her in as well. It was super exciting. Yeah, so Donald Trump knows how to put on a show.
doesn't he?
And I don't know if it is, again, this is the only bill signing ceremony I've been in my entire career. It is very rare for legislation to get signed into law. But it was, it was only about 150 guests from the crypto industry as a whole. And, you enter kind of on the east side and there's this sort of long hallway and there's like a little, a duet of like string players. And then when you actually continue to walk into the White House, there's like a quartet that's playing more music. And it's like a very kind of immersive experience. And then you get into the East Wing, which is beautiful. And you kind of go and eventually you take your seats and then all of a sudden they let the media in, which is about another like 50 or so people. And they're like
frenzy
all
of
in the back.
Rabid dogs.
Yeah. And then the like members of Congress come in and they've kind of got seats saved in the front row. And then, the Commerce Secretary comes in and so I've been to 2 Taylor Swift concerts. This was more exciting than Taylor Swift, and I love Taylor Swift. And it was just this like buildup of excitement. And then, they play Hail to the Chief and Donald Trump comes in and, he's like no farther than the guy standing right there. And he's just talking about making America the crypto capital of the world. And he's signing this bill and holding up the pen and you can hear it's so loud with a Sharpie. And I mean, I was like, how did we go from where we were to where we were today? Like, it's just been the most remarkable turnaround.
Yeah. You talk a lot about champions on both sides. You talk about, Republicans, Democrats, and how they're all working together to make this happen. When crypto first started, it was based on financial inclusion, accessibility, democratization, and now we're kind of stepping into this hyper-financialization capitalist world. Where does crypto sit on that left to right spectrum for you now, given the progress we've made?
I mean, I like to think I think it's a little bit more right than left, but there's a lot of sort of outcomes, that like when I think of crypto, I think of people being able to hold their own assets, to having more access to services. I think that it's lower cost. Like, I think there are a lot of things that appeal to Democrats that once they understand, they see, oh, wow, this is actually super democratizing. Like, we're trying to take the power from centralized, corporations and share the wealth across, with the users. And I think that that's like really powerful. So I do think when it comes to regulation, there tends to be, sort of on the sort of left side of the political spectrum, a desire to have more control and have a more sort of heavy hand. And I think that's where, the love of intermediaries is just a little bit greater. But if you look at the Republican side too, there are some like really strong like national security hawks on the right that, really want to make sure that we're not being able to do too much globally. So I don't know, you kind of run into problems on both sides, but nobody ever goes from being like pro crypto to anti crypto in Washington. It's really only the other way around.
One-way traffic.
Yeah, it's one-way traffic, and there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of education. It's like a constant effort across the board. But no, I'm very optimistic that we're going to be able to come up with like a reasonable framework that will last for decades, and that this is a technology that you can't ignore. And I think there's realization across both sides that this is something that needs to be addressed. Whereas before there was sort of this like, oh, like we're going to ignore that and it's going to go away. It's not going away.
How do you try and stop crypto as an asset class from being weaponized as a propaganda piece by either side?
Oh, that's a good question.
Or singularly focused as well, I might.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I don't see them weaponizing it. I think I don't know if I've really thought about it from that perspective. I mean, I think elected officials in particular, and appointed officials who come from elected officials, they care very much about what people think. And so I think as long as the voters and the constituents across the country, are using crypto, are excited about a crypto and passionate about crypto, I think that will ultimately sort of trickle down into their thinking.
This evolution that obviously you've been a significant part of, going from extremely combative SEC regime where people were literally fleeing the country so they could continue operating their businesses, and many of them came here to the UAE with you've got the VARA, Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority, you've got the ADGM over in Singapore, you've got the MAS. to what extent now are we seeing a return of those companies, of those projects? And the main reason I'm asking is because yesterday we got news, and I'm going to make sure I get this right, that Binance received a full ADGM license. Circle received an Abu Dhabi license for full operations as money service provider here as well. So clearly there's a bit of competition. I'm seeing, who's the nicest regulator. Seems to be a reasonable competition to look at. Are companies now returning some or all of their operations back to the US? Can we be proud of this change yet?
No, I mean, I think we have seen developers come back, right? Because listen, if you're a centralized exchange, you're going to need licenses in whatever jurisdiction. You can't just pick up and go from one place to another. But I think it's the developers that just pick up their laptops, hop on a plane, and they can do what they do from anywhere in the world. And so we do seem to be getting a lot of that back. Like we see new companies that are headquartering in San Francisco or New York and actually trying to be in an office together again. Like it seems like we've come full circle on that. So we've looked into trying to quantify this. I don't have any numbers off the top of my head, but we're looking at actually doing something with my old from the Blockchain Association on this. But it does feel like people are coming back. But I think, seeing what's going on with, the Finance Week with Breakpoint here in Abu Dhabi, the UAE, I think, is trying to be very competitive and continuing to court these businesses. And I think we're going to continue to see that across the globe, because I do think is going to be a really important part of our financial system going forward. And, they're going to want to have those jobs but I think that's great, right? Like competition is good. Like
Absolutely.
I think we all, everyone here loves competition.
Forces us in the right direction.
Yes,
Definitely.
yes.
Yeah.
But it shows, how far behind the US was. And I think, when we do things like pass the Genius Act, like it goes noticed around the globe by regulators, and they're trying to figure out how to stay competitive and make sure that their policies are, similar to those of the US. So I do think the US has an important role to play on the regulatory front.
Speaking of competition, I think Eno's about to come back on stage, and we're going to be competing for Stan.
Okay.
The energy that he has is like permeating through this glass box. But I want to obviously end on a very, very bullish note. And I know that Finn has another question for you. But we talk about all this optimism, institutional adoption. We had obviously retail adoption proved its case. We stress tested the network with Donald Trump launching a meme coin. It seems that didn't really deter lawmakers, regulators from thinking that this is a serious industry. We're moving generally in the right direction. Price tanked a little bit. Okay, it's not too bad. Surely there's still something we're missing. Surely from all the experience you've had as a regulator, as a lobbyist, both previously with the Blockchain Association and now with SPI, surely you can identify some things that we're still not quite getting right in Solana land. Well, what would you say those things are? It's a tough question.
That's interesting. So actually, you want to know what I think the biggest challenge, and because I've been spending a lot of time thinking about this, so maybe this is just from my perspective, but crypto just works at a different speed and speaks a different language as a community, whether it be within Solana or within broader crypto. And the rest of the world doesn't move at that speed. Washington doesn't move at that speed.
People actually go to bed,
it's institutions, markets close. Institutions don't work at that speed. And I think that one of our biggest challenges is we need to start to convey the value of like what Solana is in words and at a pace that people can understand. I mean, if you look at, like Merrill Lynch, for example, you can now put a very small % of your portfolio in a Bitcoin ETF, finally, right? Like that just happened like a couple of weeks ago. That is a baby step. And so there's a lot of education that we need to do to a much broader audience. And so we need to learn how to stop talking amongst ourselves and share that message with the world. I think about my boyfriend's dad, who's 80 years old, former like badass investment banker. And for many times when I see him over dinner, he's like, how is this Solana thing going? He's like, that's not backed by anything, right? He's like, well, one day I walk in, he's like, printed something out. He's like, Western Union is building on Solana. I was like, yeah. He's like, everyone thought that was Western Union was going to die, and now it's being competitive. Like, and he finally got it, but it took like a Western Union announcement for him to kind of have that moment. And so I think we just need to figure out how to relate to people outside of crypto and just start figuring out on a larger scale how to convey what everyone is trying to build here and the value proposition.
So the JP Morgans, the Western Unions, these sort of big recognizable names being
Yes.
or uttered in the same breath as Solana, I think is
Yes.
moving us in the right direction.
Yes.
But the job's not done.
The job is not done.
We were speaking with Anthony Scaramucci yesterday, and
Yes.
he pointed to the passing of the Clarity Act as the opening of the floodgates where adoption comes through. Are we over-indexing on the importance of the Clarity Act?
I mean, listen, I think if done correctly, it could have a huge impact on that front. I do think that there are pieces of it that the SEC and the CFTC can do without legislation. So if we get those parts done, I think it will have an equally strong effect. I did not realize, though, if you look at like the Genius Act, what a big deal that was. Look at all the announcements that have come out around stable coins. And so I do think that getting a good bill signed into law would be a huge boon, but I don't think it's critical in order for that sort of institutional level adoption to take place.
Is it a good simplification to say that Clarity will do for a wider basket of crypto assets what Genius did for stablecoins?
I think so. Again, if done correctly. If done incorrectly, it could have a negative effect. So yes, so it has to be written in a proper way that does support the ecosystem.
I feel like that could be a whole conversation in and of itself.
Yeah,
How do
we
do
can
it
go all
correctly?
day.
I know.
It's great that we have people like the Solana Policy Institute there to make sure it gets done.
Yeah. We want to make sure. Yeah, it's very easy to mess these things up. But again, people are working so hard. They're burning the candle at both ends, and they're really trying to get this done. And I think, I don't think the crypto industry is gonna let something slide through that has a negative impact. Like if it does get done, it will be good. And I think that, I think there's a decent chance that we can get that done in 2026.
I love that optimism. I really love the optimism. I want to end on an even more optimistic, positive, bullish, perhaps blindly note. What's the single most exciting thing that you're looking forward to in 2026 that you can leave us with on a note of sort of optimism going forward? Because obviously price action in Q4 wasn't quite as bullish as we expected it to be. Now we're sort of looking forward to April, to potential regulatory changes, but Q1 could still be quite bullish. What's really exciting you about next year?
Yeah, so I think what we're going to see out of the SEC is potentially an innovation exemption, but a rulemaking around tokenization, around bringing equities on chain.
Okay.
And I think if we update the rules, again, you don't have to change the law, you could just update the rules to do that. I think that's going to open the floodgate for upgrading all of the hundreds of trillions of dollars of assets around the globe to come on chain. And so
On Solana.
on Solana. Sorry. So I think I'm most excited to see what the SEC does under his leadership.
Excellent. We could go all day. We could talk about all the Trump news, the meme coin news, the regulatory news, what it feels like to be in the White House. Unfortunately, Kristen Smith, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Really, really appreciate it. And don't go anywhere. We are going to be back in a couple of minutes with Rebecca Rettig from Gito Labs, who was previously the Chief Legal Officer at Polygon. We've also had the pleasure of speaking with her a couple of times.
She's fantastic.
She's absolutely fantastic, making regulation sexy since 2020. She absolutely loves talking about this stuff. It's her bread and butter. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
All
Thank
right.
you so much. I'll take the microphone from you.
Okay.
Thank you. And enjoy the rest of your time here at Breakpoint.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Kristen Smith, the Solana Policy Institute president, joining Solana Floor to discuss all things regulation, all things Solana, all things institutional adoption, all things lobbying from the White House. She was in the White House with President Trump when the bill was being signed. And we are, of course, being joined by Rebecca Rettig.
Hi.
Hello, how are you? So nice to see you.
Good to see
Welcome
you.
to Solana Floor.
Thanks for having me.
You're going to hold the microphone as well.
Amazing.
You have your own microphone as well.
I mean, I feel special.
Absolutely. So I want to start very high level. We're obviously here in the capital of capital. It's you got the $1 trillion asset managers,
Yeah.
the DATCos, the ETF issuers,
Yeah.
the degens, the DeFi OGs.
Yeah.
Everyone's here in the same arena, in the Etihad arena.
Yeah.
First impressions, thoughts?
So this is actually my first Breakpoint.
Welcome.
And yeah, thank you. The thing I felt yesterday was like, clearly Solana is where the future is being built. in every way, shape, or form. Obviously, fine, internet capital markets, but I think markets for everything. And, you know, as we've seen right now, we're in a moment of prediction markets, but I actually think that's like a precursor to markets on anything you want to think about, AirPods, shoes, and everything. And so we're going to see everything keep getting built out further and further. And I think
You're into prediction markets. Do we gamble on? Do we sort of get involved in the political outcomes?
You don't gamble, you
Oh,
predict.
definitely.
We don't gamble. We predict.
It's not gambling.
It's not gambling. I
It
know.
is a game of skill, not a game of chance.
We have rebranded. You're right. Not gambling. But personally, I love jumping on Polymarket with my friends and seeing what's going to happen with whether it's football, whether it's politics. It's a really fun way of I think.
So I'm a little
predicting the future.
wonky. I actually like it from a transparency of information. Like I
Right.
actually think it really
Yeah.
goes with the cypherpunk ideals
For sure.
of having different people participate in our markets in a totally different way and having information come to us in a less filtered way. So I think it really goes with the ethos of crypto. So
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
why I really like it.
It did
It
a
must
better
be a
job.
legal minefield, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Can confirm. But it's cool. And look, I was talking about this a bunch because, when you're around Breakpoint, people ask you, like, how did you get into it and things like that. And I was a creator for a long time. I was a dancer, I was an artist and stuff like that. And obviously now I'm a lawyer. And I think working as a lawyer and an operator in crypto lets you bring a creative side of yourself back into everything that you do.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Last time we spoke, we were in Austin, I believe. I think it was late or mid 2023 or something. And I was saying, you know what, regulation maybe isn't the sexiest topic. And you cut me off and you said, regulation is sexy. And you went off on a rant and it was amazing. Is regulation still sexy in 2025?
We've all been doing regulation for so long, so regulation is like tiring a little bit now. It is though. It is because you're at the cutting edge of everything. And look, the regulation side for me is really sexy because as I'm very public about, decentralization, permissionlessness, like what we came here to build is super sexy to me and really what it's all about. And so trying to stay true to cypherpunk ideals while also building the future and bringing everybody along with us is really hard and super exciting.
It is really hard. And we've been asking, all week, we've been asking people, to what extent is it a problem or have we lost touch with that sort of ethos of decentralization, of disintermediation, the ideals that brought us all together, the institutional adoption journey? Has it come at a sort of negative trade-off? Are we losing our core identity? I think is something we've been asking. Got some very, very interesting questions as well.
Yeah.
Curious
From both
about-
sides of the fence. A lot of people see it, it's not one or the other, it's and. It's a
It's
collective
both,
movement,
yeah.
it's both.
Some people have said absolutely not. It's fine because these systems will exist in their own sort of silos. They're just built on the same base layer, if you will. Curious what your take is as somebody who cares about decentralization and disintermediation.
I do. I care about it a lot. I think somebody asked me like, oh, where are we going to be in 5 years?
Who knows where we're going to be tomorrow?
So a little bit. And so that's what I think. Like, I think seeing how everything, I couldn't have told you or predicted what happened in the last decade in crypto. Some of it was, positive and some of it was negative, and it's always a surprise. And so I actually think there are enough of us who remain true believers. And I think you can stay a true believer, but also try to bring the rest of the world along with us. And that may mean taking dips and turns in ways that you didn't expect before. But I think a lot of us are all here for the reasons. Look, here's the other thing I'll say. The one thing that crypto enables is personal autonomy. And if you actually think about where the next generation of people and what they are going and what they really care about, they care about personal autonomy over assets, over data, over their creations, over all of that. And you're never going to get that without blockchain. You cannot do that in an intermediated system. And so, sure, maybe we're doing a little TradFi stuff here and there and getting assets.
Just a few $1 trillion asset managers.
Yeah, but I do think that from the autonomy piece and the cultural piece of it, the decentralization and permissionlessness is going to stay because that's what everybody cares about.
I certainly
So
hope so.
part of that, if you're looking from the outside and you look at this blockchain world, there's, from a legal perspective, a tremendous amount of smoke and mirrors. In the last kind of week or two alone, we've seen something called fraud and becomes misstep in the same breath. How on earth do you police something that can be so variable based on what different people are saying about it?
I mean, the law is actually clear. And so what people say on Twitter may not, I know that's surprising to say, but those people may not actually be talking about what the law is. And
Or
maybe,
know what the law is.
correct.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like, especially when you're talking about like DeFi and stuff like that, like, well, what laws could we have? It's like, we have laws to hold people responsible for doing bad things. Like, we kind of don't need new ones for that. So I'm like not as worried about policing bad behavior because we already have laws that apply to a lot of the bad behavior we've seen. Some of it we might need some new things or some tweaks, but that's like super wonky and super deep in the weeds and probably not that interesting for everybody.
I want to go back to when you first entered the Solana ecosystem.
Yeah. That was a year ago.
Right.
I accepted my Judo offer this time last year.
Right.
It was around Abu Dhabi Finance Week.
I recall, and I think we were in talks with the GTO team at the time. We spoke with Seg. I asked him about airdrops, and he said, "Oof, that's one of those things that I'm probably going to get into trouble if I talk about it too much."
That was before me, so he just knew.
He just knew. He just knew what was happening. But talk to me about that transition. Was it a bit of a culture shock in any way? Did you come into the ecosystem and think these guys have no idea what they can and can't say? No.
So first of all, no. Lucas and Zano are both great and amazing, and I've done less Twitter policing with the two of them than maybe my entire time, a short time. So, but I also don't really want to be the Twitter police. And I think, Lucas has a certain personality. I would say Zano walks a tighter line, and maybe I've been like once like, oh, hey, what about this? But less. Solana is a culture shock.
Right.
In an amazing way. First of all, you cannot miss it. Like, you can't miss that it's totally different. It is like the perfect symbiosis of Raj and Toli, I think. It is so top down. So you have these like deeply technical people with this very cool cultural bent. And there's also a capitalism around Solana that makes it like just, oh, I'm just building tech.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You
you're
do
building
things.
You can just do things. Yes, in Solana you really can just do things. And sometimes you don't even have to talk about doing things.
Right.
I think in Solana there's less talk and a lot more doing things, and I really like that.
It's an interesting way of putting it. As long as you don't feel like it's something that you have to go out there and be like, dude, I'm gonna take over your X account. You can't be saying that stuff.
No, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm tired at this point.
Yeah.
Or maybe I've just gotten like really desensitized to it. And look, I think that certainly the change in regulatory environment lets you be a little more risk on. I'm not talking about like, things where you can debate the legality of it, but I think that I'm also starting to look at things more as an operator and less strictly legal. And building a business is hard. And I think when you come into an in-house role, you also have to think about like, how is the business going to grow, and where are your bright lines, and where do you give advice and then let the business take it from there.
So part of that, we talk a lot about culture. We talk about, Lucas and Zano just relentlessly shipping. And that's one of the mantras of Solana, ship fast, break things, or move fast and break things. When you've got billions at stake now, how on earth do you kind of balance between the two and you maintain that mantra while also adhering to existing legal structures?
I think for shipping software, there are standards in the space that good shippers adhere to, right? Code audits, testing in beta, slow rollouts, things like that. And I think Lucas and Zano are pros at figuring out how to get things into, especially because we're so deep in the stack, how to get things into Solana without breaking it, and making sure that things stay stable. So that's less legal and more tech, honestly. Yeah. And look, here's the thing I'll say generally about being a lawyer is like, you got to know where your lines are as a lawyer too. Like, fine, I want to see what the contract says about the code audit and who takes responsibility and stuff like that. But as long as you're doing an audit, like, I'm not going to overstep. I need to make sure we're doing it. But there is, like, you're running a business. And I think people really need to be mindful of that too.
So what would be your line with the conversation we're going to have with Zeno later? Well, what am I not allowed to ask him?
Oh, ask him anything.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
That's the best part about Zano.
You heard it. We have a green light. We can ask absolutely anything. That's good. No one's
I mean, I don't know what his red lines are, but
I feel I got pretty close to one of his red lines last year when I was asking him in Crossroads in Istanbul about airdrops, and he swerved it once. Second time, he sort of looked at me and went, "You know what? I'm just going to tell you a story." And he told me a story about how the first airdrop that they did changed the life of a hot dog salesman or something in Southeast Asia, and like I thought that was a very touching anecdote.
Yeah.
But I felt, this man has been trained on how to swerve questions. It's very good.
Maybe, but what I'd actually say about Lucas and Zano, and like especially when you're in these like weird market shifts and stuff like that, you really want to be building with high integrity people.
Absolutely.
And both of them I respect so immensely. So I don't know. Ask him whatever.
He swerved it skillfully.
I trust him. Tell him I trust him.
Yeah.
Be like, here, I'm going to ask you some hard questions, but your lawyer said she trusts
That
you.
might stress him out even more. You feel like you're actually watching on one of these live streams. Okay, so perception, language that we use. Okay, we've sort of moved away.
Do you know that I'm the craziest about language we use in crypto? I wrote this op-ed years ago that people were into then, but I still stand by now that we're like our own worst enemies based on the language that we use in crypto.
Absolutely.
Like, instead
throwing around it's crime season as if we're
I didn't mean that.
Oh,
I mean
okay.
more calling things money market funds on chain. It's like, that's not where we should be going. Or even like something as simple as wallet. Like that has caused so much, I don't know, like consternation and stuff like that. So I think we need to be very intentional. Back in the day,
Do teams know this?
Did I believe that?
No, that we shouldn't be calling things wallets.
We're there. So you can't roll things back. I tried to roll back algorithmic stablecoins and people were like, no. So
it sounds fancy.
Yeah.
What should we be using instead if not wallet?
We're down. It's already there. Right? You can't get everybody to shift their mindset. But like what I'll say is it's like very hard to convince people like it's just software and you can't regulate it like you regulate a bank or something like that. Yeah.
You can sanction it apparently. OFAC famously sanctioned the founders or core contributors of Tornado Cash. That was a whole thing. We made a documentary about that a couple of years ago. So depending on who's doing the regulating, I guess you can sanction code. It's not necessarily always free speech.
Two different types of things. Here's what I'll say. Tornado Cash is a whole different thing. We can, as you said, you did a whole documentary on it. That's separate. They sanctioned code. Obviously, they rolled that back now.
They did.
But you're not sanctioning wallets as code. There are actually tons of wallets, no Solana wallets actually, only Bitcoin and Ethereum wallets on the sanctions list.
Fingers crossed it stays that way.
I know. They're sanctioning the people and attaching the wallets of those people. So like if you're a bad guy and they know that's your Bitcoin address, they will say that's a sanctioned wallet because it's attached to a sanctioned person.
Gotcha. Does that become extremely difficult when people can have side wallets and symbols and they can, obfuscate as much as they like?
I mean, these blockchain analytics companies had made like a whole market out of tracing wallets that are attached to sanctioned wallets and hops and all of that sort of stuff. So sure, it's difficult, but on the other side, when you talk to law enforcement, FBI, whatever, they actually love it.
The transparency element.
The transparency of it, being able to track it, things like that.
Yeah, and I guess we're moving towards a highly sort of artificial intelligence-driven future. It's probably going to be a lot easier for them to just train AIs to say, well, find all the transactions and map the likelihood of these people having interacted with sanctioned wallets, and maybe that's a problem in the future.
Maybe we're very far from that because I just spun up something with like an LLM and they told me it was 2024. So I'm pretty sure we're very far away.
I wish it was 2024. I think we're meme coins, but everything.
We're coming back. We're coming back.
We are coming back. You mentioned perception. You think a lot about perception. I think the industry's taken a few hits in terms of perception. Legally speaking, as far as the Democrats have viewed President Trump and his endeavors, and I think it all sort of started going downhill with his meme coin launch, and then his wife launched a meme coin, and then there was botting that was quite self-evident. People had sort of sniped the token launch. Not great optics. We go around joking about it's crime season, but the Democrats have come out and said, look, he might be the self-fashioned crypto president, and he might have all these crypto ventures, but obviously it is also crypto corruption. So from your perspective as both an operator and a legal professional, to what extent are we shooting ourselves in the foot by by not, I guess, distancing ourselves from this, or can we distance ourselves from this? Where do you view that perception issue that's arising from, President Trump's crypto endeavors?
If you believe in permissionlessness, you are not going to be able to distance yourself from it. I don't know if I think anybody, maybe some people are doubling down and supporting it and things like that. But before President Trump launched his meme coin, he also had launched trading cards, and he had done that permissionlessly.
Shoes, steaks,
yeah,
Bibles.
everything. So there is a capitalism that's making its way on chain. So I don't know. And maybe that's not helpful, but I think crypto, we did this debate yesterday, right? About like, do you think crypto should have political alignment as a growth strategy? And the answer is of course not, because we would never have the Genius Act if we had only picked a side. And so even though it's been really hard to do things, regardless, the US, UK, all over the place, you got to get into every room.
Yep.
And like we've seen, right, everybody's talked about this. Innovation has this curve where people are super resistant to it, and we're still there. So you got to keep pushing.
So would you say that within the legal community, there's still the vast majority of people are quite anti-crypto or very skeptical of crypto?
In the legal community, in the policy community,
In the legal
or
community.
I think there are people who don't even know about it still, like just general lawyers, stuff like that. Maybe people know about Bitcoin.
Stablecoins, they must have heard of stablecoins.
People know about stable coins now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's coming into the like traditional vernacular, but I'd say the number of great lawyers who understand crypto is very small.
Right.
Is that a good thing? Do we want to sort of keep it in our own little bubble and stay away from my crypto, my ethos?
It depends. Crypto lawyering is as tribal as crypto itself.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah.
Lawyers are reasonable.
Tribal in what sense?
Certain types of structures, like do we believe in like Panamanian foundations versus Cayman foundations versus Swiss foundations, like that kind of stuff. There's also a really cool community around crypto lawyers too, and like we have our own Telegram groups.
Oh, really?
We do.
Oh, don't let us in there. No.
You're not.
Okay.
But so there is a community. We all do really help each other, but there is some tribalism too of like, oh my God, that was such a stupid legal structure, but same kind of thing.
Speaking of tribalism, you said earlier that it would be stupid for us as an industry to pick a side, politically speaking.
I don't think I said stupid, but sure.
I'm paraphrasing. I'm putting words in my mouth. I apologize. It would be not as smart as other alternatives.
Inadvisable.
However, during the last presidential election, we definitely picked a horse in the race. So, are we stuck with that until the end of the term? Or are we stuck with that until the consequences of the midterms become apparent?
I mean, the president's the president, so...
But he's the crypto president.
Yeah.
Quote, unquote, crypto president.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see what's happening in DC right now, where we're past Genius and now we're doing market structure. And I mean, inside baseball, like we're all engaging with both sides to get market structure across the line. And the questions around that are really hard still. And, we're on a totally different time zone. So when my day ends here, my day in DC starts, and doing a bunch of virtual meetings and stuff like that on both sides. I'll wake up to texts from people and various different agencies and stuff like that. So nobody's picking one side right now.
Okay.
Like to get everything across the line, we got to really be engaging.
Realistically, to what extent do you think it's the midterms are going to jeopardize that process? I know it's super hard. There's probably a prediction market for this.
Definitely.
But put a number on it. Is it 60% likelihood of midterms going the wrong way, and then we've got to face even more hurdles?
I think
is it 40%? Is it
I think I mean, I am looking at like the data. I think that we're having another mini swing. We've had lots of these like really hyper large swings. I think we're having another mini swing. But I'm going to take it back to something that we talked about before, which is like people are having these swings. So they're like, who is going to be there for me? And I think if we can get the narrative across that like crypto is actually there for people, it's not going to be hopefully too destructive to the long-term process. But I think, look, you can see from everything that's happening on Twitter, Patrick Witt's engaging and things like that, and talked about, there was a White House summit yesterday. I'm trying to figure out the days since we're on the other side of the world, but yesterday, and a lot of us couldn't go because we were all
It's
here.
day 2 of Breakpoint. That's all that matters.
That's right. But yeah, it was funny because a lot of us who were like invited to go to this little mini summit about market structure were here. We're like, can we do it virtually? And they're like, no, show up or not. So we're like, well, we're not going to make this 15-hour flight back in time. But look, I think the White House is super motivated to get this done. And that was something they always wanted to do. So look, I'm hopeful we can get a really good bill across the line. Not just any bill, but a good bill. And it's very difficult.
This is a question I asked Kristen earlier. From a foundational ethos, crypto is, for me, quite leftist. It's about financial inclusion. It's about custody of your own assets. That has, I guess, switched recently to a more capitalized angle. Where does crypto sit now on that spectrum of left to right?
What do you mean? Like, where does the industry sit? Where does what we stand for sit?
Where does perception of the industry from the outside looking in?
Oh, I think perception of the industry sits on the right.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's necessarily true or right on some level. I think that, as I said, we're all engaging on all sides. And anybody who really cares just wants to see crypto be protected long term and let this industry grow. Like, there are a lot of us who are like, we are engaging so that we can get to the right answer, not just any answer. And once there's a right answer, like, I'm hoping to chill a little bit. Not like chill from a work perspective. Obviously, there's like jobs not finished. That's like Lucas's favorite thing. One more hard quarter. But that's like every quarter.
We asked exactly the same question to Nick Dukov. He also said, one more hard quarter. And, culturally, this, as you mentioned, comes from the top down, from Tony and Raj. Love that mentality. Job's not done, get back to work. But it was a very, very hard quarter. If you think about, 10-10, potentially contagion, potentially bodies floating up. Legally, did anything sort of flash to you and you were like, oh my God, this is a problem? Or was it sort of more on the trader user side? What are now that it's kind of over, what are your views of that particular crisis?
I think there were some large players who were engaged in some part of the market. I can't figure out which, that may have flipped a little bit of a switch or flipped some switches off. Can't speak to what, I don't know what they did. And so I don't know the legal ramifications of that. And look, I think we've seen so many changes and fluctuations in the market. I actually think the existential feeling that we have on crypto Twitter is familiar. We've had it before. And I think every time people in crypto have to re-underwrite their thesis, it's a great thing because something new comes out of it. We come out even more energized. And when you've been in the real trenches, forget the trading trenches, but when you've been in the real trenches with people for so long, you just come out better, stronger, more reinvigorated. And so if you're sticking it out and building, talk to Zano about that. Because
we should.
Yeah.
We absolutely should. Yeah.
I think it's a really good thing.
Yeah. I think we should stop using this term trenches for this meme coin world.
I know.
It is such a degradation of what the actual trenches are for a lot of people.
Yeah, I do think we should stop using it for that because like the real trenches are, I used to say it like I was a litigator before I got into crypto in some ways. And like when you're at trial, you're in the trenches. And like that's what being in these bear markets are like. You are in the trenches, you are building with people. And look, even when it's a good market, you are building things is hard. It's really hard, especially on Solana where we're moving fast and shipping things well. That's hard. And so, I think we should stop using trenches on the
And actually, I think one of my biggest takeaways from everyone we've spoken to is that nobody cares about price. Actually, everyone is here because they're building apps that are gonna change how we do things, and that's the primary focus, and that's why we're all here. So less focus on the trenches and the prices, more focus on building meaningful applications.
And
markets for everything, like we started talking about.
And not going to jail in the process, ideally. Speaking of going to jail, SBF is in jail. CZ kind of went to jail.
Yeah, he went to jail.
4 months.
Yeah.
Has been pardoned. A lot of people are not very happy about it. Trump was asked about it during a press conference, and he said, "What do you know about crypto? You know nothing." But then often Trump will also say things like, "I don't know anything about that."
Yeah.
So great deflector, great communicator, understands how the media works. What are the odds of SBF also getting pardoned, coming back with a new exchange or something wild like that?
I hope it's zero.
Yeah.
I hope.
I'm sure there's a prediction market for this.
Absolutely is.
There may be a prediction market for it. I'm very curious about that. Zero. That was talk about existential moments in crypto, especially because we were
For
moving
Solana, yeah.
Solana
felt it.
legislation. We had just started getting traction in DC. Like I remember having to fly down to DC 2 weeks after FTX had crashed, and I was like, God, what am I going to do to like amp myself up to walk into these meetings? And I read the Bitcoin white paper. Like I'll never
Wow.
forget about that.
Wow.
Great.
When in
Yeah.
doubt,
Really great
when in
law.
doubt, read the Bitcoin white
It's
paper.
true though,
Yeah.
because you're like, what am I here for? I hope zero. I really hope zero chance that he gets pardoned. And I really rarely come out with like spicy takes or
Yeah.
like I really, try to be pretty, just like a champion of the industry, but zero.
What do the prediction markets say? Do you know?
I think last time I checked, it was like 10%, 8%.
Okay.
So
So people are just thinking like, can I buy $1 for 10 cents? Let's see. It's not going to happen, is it? Fingers crossed that doesn't happen. You said you rarely come out with spicy takes, but I'm sure you're holding back on something. I'm sure there's something that you're seeing happen in Solana land right now that you think, okay, we've come so far. We've had the crisis of Trump. We've obviously before that FTX, the meme coin issue. Libra was obviously a major international scandal. There's ongoing international investigations into that. I don't know if it's the FBI or Europol or Interpol, but somebody's investigating what the frick happened there, and something is going to happen. I don't know if it's Hayden Smith's going to deal with it, or Milei and his family is going to deal with it, but something is going to happen. What are the issues similar to that that might be brewing sort of behind the scenes at the moment that you want to say something spicy about, but you can't? Now is the time to say it.
Oh, I have started saying my spicy thing is, and I'm writing a paper on it now that's going to come out early next year. We do not need permissioned chains.
Oh.
No corporate chains, please.
No corporate change.
how do we stop that from happening?
Yeah, how do you stop a massive corporation from doing what
I
they
mean,
want?
they're going to do it, but I think what we actually have to emphasize is that banks, financial institutions, anybody who wants to transact actually will be safer in a permissionless world from an operational resilience perspective than in a tightened up permissioned world where we've seen all sorts of things happen. Like you see data hacks, you see all that stuff. So my biggest spicy take right now is no more corporate chains.
But TradFi institutions and trillion-dollar asset managers being here is totally fine until they issue their own permission systems.
They should be on permissionless networks. We should bring financial institutions to permissionless networks. Safer for them, not inconsistent with the laws as they work today. Don't need to change the laws to let them work on permissionless networks. So, yeah.
I guess the argument in favor of them is that they can come with this huge war chest and they can build these tremendous walled gardens by which they can operate their own kind of. We talk a lot about bringing trillions on chain.
Yeah.
And we want that to be on Solana,
Correct.
obviously. But what's going to keep people on Solana if Vanguard comes up with its own chain and then it's hyper privatized?
I don't understand why we need those chains. We have permission databases now. Like, okay, just go do that wherever. But you're not going to expand out. You're not going to have new people using your products. You're not going to have new types of access. You're just not going to bring new people into the financial world. And the permissionless networks can do that.
I want to end on a bullish note.
Okay.
Obviously, regulation is still sexy, not
It
just
is.
from your perspective, but we need it. It is moving in the right direction. I'm super excited. Again, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your unfiltered takes with us. But what's the single most exciting thing that you think is going to happen in 2026 as far as Solana's progression, this natural evolution that we've discussed today, institutional adoption, the retail participants not necessarily feeling pushed out, not feeling that their original ethos, the reasons why they're here, are getting destroyed by institutions. With all of that in mind, what is the single most exciting thing that you're looking forward to next year? Surely not the midterms.
Oh, but do you mean from a policy perspective?
From a Solana perspective.
Oh, from a Solana perspective? That we have no idea what's going to happen next on Solana.
Excellent.
I love that.
Oh,
Excellent.
good.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
The only way is up. Okay.
Rebecca.
Rebecca Reddick, thank you so much for making time to talk to us on
Thanks.
Solana Floor live from Breakpoint 2025
Yeah, awesome.
here in Abu Dhabi. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
I'll take that microphone from you.
You have it.
Thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of your time.
Likewise.
I will.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
Take care. Don't go anywhere. We are going to be with Ben Coveston next from Temporal. Now, Humidify is obviously the talk of the town for good reason as well. A lot is happening here. Day 2, Breakpoint 2025 in Abu Dhabi, the capital of capital. And I am going to stand up and shift over. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Ben Coveston. Slide in.
I'll jump right in the corner.
This is for you, sir.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Let's sit here.
Jump in the middle of us. Ben, welcome.
We're good. Your bag's in as well.
All right.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. Ben
Thank you
Covington,
for having me.
founder of Temporal, who was, in my view, one of the most crack teams. You guys are doing incredible work at the moment. You're absolutely everywhere. Humidify is doing 48% of total weekly DEX volume, which is huge. Harmonic is packing blocks tighter than ever before and getting more average rewards than you know a lot of the other block builds we're seeing. I want to get straight into it and start with Harmonic. Where did that come from? What was the motivation to build a updated, more optimized block building software? What were we lacking, and how are you getting us there?
Yeah, look, so Solana is where it is today because its teams compete, right? Aggregators compete, Borrow Lens compete, right? The prop AMMs compete, right? Where is competition missing? It's missing at the infrastructure layer. It's missing at the block building layer, right? As I just said in my talk, centralized markets, they don't die loudly, right? They die quietly, right? With small skews, right? With hidden advantages, right? And just with behavior no one can see, right? So at Harmonic, we could have just built a better monopoly, but we didn't want to do that. We rebuilt the market, right? To us, it is inevitable that you're always going to have these full monopolistic kind of block builders, trying to take over the network. You have all this custom block building solutions, right? And validators, they have a lot of demand for revenue, right? And applications have a lot of demand for inclusion, right? So in our eyes, it's inevitable that you're going to have a lot of block building solutions that come to market, right? And the job of Harmonic, right, is to, like, again, rather than having a single monopoly or a single builder, to create a market, right? So now everything's out in the open. It's transparent. We're returning the control back to the validator. We're returning the control back to the applications, right? The job is to give applications and validators maximum optionality, right? Like if things are opaque and they're locked into a single provider or like a single scheduler, like we failed, right? Validators need that optionality, right? And so do apps, right? As an app, as Humidify, right? I want block builders that pack like millions of TPS, right? That pack my blocks really, really fast, right? And really, really tight. And creating competition between block builders naturally incentivizes them to do this, right? Because let's say I send 200 Oracle updates or like 2,000 even. One block builder is, sophisticated enough to include all 2,000 of them, right? And then maybe like the other one only includes 200, right? If you look at Harmonic blocks on mainnet today, we're including more Oracle updates than any competition out there, right? And the reason we can do that is, again, we have multiple concurrent block builders that are all running in parallel, and the best block is chosen every single time. We're the only system on mainnet today that can do that. And I don't know if you guys just saw the talk, but one of the demos that we had up there on stage was on mainnet. We sent out a block with 13,000 Humidify Oracle updates, right? This is kind of a demo to like demonstrate the power of the system, right? We want institutional grade liquidity. We want tight spreads. In order to do that, market makers need to get as much information on chain as fast as possible for as many assets as possible. Every asset across every asset class, right? And so for context, right, the average block on mainnet today maybe has like 200 user transactions. And we're just like, let's just do 13,000 Oracle updates, right? And we're just getting started, right? Like by the end of 2026, if we're not doing demo blocks that are like over 100,000 Oracle updates, like we failed. We absolutely failed. So we're really, really excited to drive internet capital markets forward on Solana, and through building Humidify, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit, right? We're going to use a lot of this knowledge that we've learned building the #1 application on Solana by invocations and by volume, and we're going to take this knowledge to build infrastructure for internet capital markets. We know exactly what is missing. We know exactly what we already have. We know from experience.
Perfect. We are going to dive right into Humidify and get really wet with that in a second. But I first want to start, you and KV are almost in a race to bring down the transaction and the CUs as low as possible. Yeah. What is the edge there that you guys have that you're able to do this at scale?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So you and KV are always in a race to kind of get those CUs down as much as possible.
Yep.
How do you get there? Is it just full-time shipping and working late at night to kind of get that across the line?
Well, look, first of all, I'll say our team are shippers, right? I couldn't be more proud of everything that we've shipped in the last year. We're fully in office all in New York. Team is always on the grind. They work extremely hard. That's just part of it, right? Like the raw natural talent of the people that we have on our team is unmatched, right? So proud of them. You know, KV is a phenomenal engineer, one of the best in the world, right? That's where the bar is at Temporal, right? We only hire the best of the absolute best, right? And we only build the best, right? So back to your Oracle update question, right? I mean, like to us, it's like we're like pretty pragmatic about it, right? It's like we say, okay, you know, one store takes this many compute units, one load takes this many compute units, right? What do I have to do within this Oracle update? You know, how do I write the cheapest assembly to do this, right? And we do compete on these compute units because, you know, every scheduler out there basically prioritizes on tip normalized by CU, right? So which means the lower CU that you have in your Oracle update, the more priority you get over the competitors, and that just has to be balanced with the complexity of the Oracle update. So right now, Humidify is at 47 CUs. It's one of the cheapest programs on mainnet today by CUs, right? That's really, really good because we don't take up that much block space. It's hyper efficient. This allows us to quote many, many more assets, again, across many more asset classes. So yeah, I mean, competition is fierce, but I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're pretty pragmatic about it. You know, the folks on my team have the knowledge to be able to write Oracle update fully in raw SBPF assembly. and look, I mean, this niche knowledge is surprisingly useful
So we touched on it as niche knowledge. If we focus it down to the average DeFi user who opens up their wallet and goes to a routed trade through Jupiter, what does all of this look like? If you condense down, you know, hyper efficiency use, what does that get for the average user?
Yeah, well, so it means they get more throughput, right? It means they get higher TPS, right? And like naturally, like the Humidify transactions are going to be a lot more prioritized, right? So like the user will go to the router will give them a quote, Humidify will have the best price. They submit the transaction that swaps on Humidify into the network, you know, give it like some time, probably less than a second, right? That transaction will propagate all the way through the network. It'll come back to the user as a confirmation and boom, swap complete, just like that. You know, this is why I love Solana. I'll never forget the first time I did this, right? You know, I came from the HFT world, you know, we weren't thinking in, you know, milliseconds, microseconds. We weren't even thinking in nanoseconds. You know, they think in picoseconds and like femtoseconds, right? You know, maybe you guys never heard these terms. But like, you know, this is the kind of timescales that we operate on, and like these are the kind of things that, you know, we're used to dealing with when we optimize our systems, right? So like again, when I first tried Solana for the first time, like I saw how fast it was. What the hell? This is insane, right? You know, like we're like
at least relative to everything else that was out there.
I mean,
and what
look, it was like
to...
BTC. I had to wait minutes for my transaction to confirm it. It was super expensive. Like when ETH gas fees were just crazy in 2012, I'm like, this is insane. Like you can't even send a transaction without being a billionaire, right? Like, what do we do? That's why I was so blown away when I tried Solana. Like I just sent the transaction. It was on an on-chain club, you know, this thing called Serum. Rest in peace, right?
The good old days there. The good old days.
And it just came back instantly. I'm like, what? Finance on chain is it's actually possible, right? Yeah. So I mean, I've been hooked ever since.
And then you thought, I'm gonna do this better, faster, more engaging. I'm gonna have even better marketing.
Look, like it might be fast, but at the end of the day, we have a lot. Yes, right. Like I think it does, you know, right now often makes sense to give away token to centralized exchanges, but also at the end of the day, we're big believers that competition is good, and the more competition we create between exchanges, right, like especially decentralized exchanges, to now challenge centralized exchanges, we're again going to have a much lower barrier to entry for like listing and for apps to really get their product out there and to get exposure into the hands of willing investors all over the world.
That's fascinating, and I don't mean to derail the conversation because I know you want to dive deeper into everything that's happening in the back end, but you talk about the trade-off there, and sometimes it's a good trade-off. It's beneficial to pay that listing fee, you know, offer up 5, even 10% of your tokens to a centralized exchange. We've been asking a lot of our guests this week to what extent
is that a vision of
biggest unlock for us? Yeah, look, I think in aggregate, like again, it's maximizing competition, maximizing throughput, minimizing latency.